here, right? My first year anniversary was just a couple days ago. But anybody who's been here during that year knows that we have seen some incredible highs and some incredibly deep and confusing lows, right? But I think that each of those 2-second pictures gave me chills going through this. So thank you for the invitation. And please remind everybody to go see the OCS Points of Pride on our website and keep following us on social media.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next, Dr. Felder, I think we have another program highlight tonight.
We do indeed, and so tonight we are so pleased to welcome Jacqueline Johnson, Director of Bands and the Orange High School Panther Band for a program spotlight tonight. And so I would be remiss if I did not mention that Mrs. Johnson has taken her own place in history of the school and the band as the first female director of bands at Orange High School. Tonight we have asked Ms. Johnson and the band to provide a brief update, and we are pleased that some of our Orange High School musicians are able to join Mrs. Johnson tonight, so welcome.
Thank you all so much. It is great to be here, and I especially want to thank the board members and Dr. Felder for the invitation to showcase our band program, and specifically tonight two new ensembles that we added in the past year, and they had extremely successful seasons. So we're excited to share that with you today. So right now we're going to be talking about winter percussion and winter guard, and I'll first explain what winter percussion and winter guard is. So Winter Guard and Winter Percussion, these are new extracurricular performance ensembles that we decided to offer this year. The students expressed interest, and we said, yes, this is something that we can offer you all. So the season started in late November and went all the way through March, and students rehearsed 2 to 3 times after school each week. And they performed their shows at competitions across the state of North Carolina. They received feedback from adjudicators as well as an overall score and ranking. So this was all, outside of the school day that they put this together, and then it was a time commitment from there on as well. So AIA is the Atlantic Indoor Association. It's a nonprofit arts organization that offers a competitive circuit for winter guard, percussion, and winds, and it spans groups from Virginia to South Carolina and North Carolina. And AIA is the premier winter performing arts circuit on the East Coast. So groups that compete in AIA range from beginner level to all the way through world class. So there are professional level performers in this circuit as well. And it spans about over 200 performing units, so it's a very big circuit. The OHS Winter Percussion Ensemble and Winter Guard competed for the first time in school history in this circuit, and they did extremely well. So I'll start with the Winter Guard. This is a kind of a spin-off of Color Guard, if you're familiar with the marching band. And their show this year was titled El Dorado, and it featured a cornet-playing sheriff searching for wanted outlaws. So they were telling a story, and it was really fun. We got a lot of positive responses from AIA audiences who saw the show. And what was really exciting about their season is that after their first competition, the Winter Guard was reviewed by the board of directors in AIA, and they were promoted up another class. So that showed that they were demonstrating skills that were more advanced beyond the classification that they started. So that was a really big honor to see them improve that much. And at the end of the season, they performed in the AIA South Championships, and they placed 3rd overall in their class. They earned bronze medals, which is pretty unheard of for a first-year group, especially after being promoted to a new class. And here is a brief clip of their performance. That was just a brief moment from their performance. Yeah, so they had just a stunning season. Our winter percussion, they also competed in the AIA circuit. So the percussion ensemble, their show was titled Stories of the Haunted, and the music that they performed was inspired by ghost stories of North Carolina. So it was close to home and really enjoyable to teach and perform. And the Winter Percussion Ensemble, they actually placed first at every single competition that they attended, which was not, we did not expect that. It was a big surprise, and these kids worked extremely hard to be able to pull off that feat. And at the end of the season, at AIA South Championships, they earned gold medals, and they are the reigning champions of their percussion concert. Here's a brief clip of their performance.
The Atlantic Indoor Association is proud to present Orange High School Percussion Ensemble.
Really quick, can I have all the students that are here for Winter Percussion and Winter Guard stand? If you want to pull out the band with that,
Sure.
you can do that too. So this is not the full group, it is summer break after all, but these are the ones that are able to make it here tonight and showcase their talents. So. Switch sides. There you go.
It's summertime.
That's awesome. There you go.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you all. And I do want to thank our staff. I am the director of bands at Orange High School, but we would not be able to offer these amazing additional programs without support from our band boosters and the school administration. And so we're able to bring in additional supplemental instructors for these groups. So Ryan Johnson, he's our director of percussion. Stephen Downing, our percussion tech. Ashlyn Robinson, Director of Guard, Larry Leal, Assistant Director of Guard, and Wen Dow, also an Assistant Director of Guard. They put in so many hours, along with myself, to make sure that our students were getting what they needed and to be successful. We could not have done it without them. I also just want to thank the Orange High School band boosters, volunteers, administrators for all of their support. Mr. Johnson, our principal, was not able to be here tonight, but he was extremely supportive of us practicing in the lobby because it was a bigger space and, you know, going to competitions and everything. Mrs. Jessica Nagy, Hillsborough Elementary School principal, and Coach Walker, he's the physical education teacher at HES, for allowing our winter guard to practice in their gymnasium throughout their season. Gym time is really difficult to find in the winter with basketball and everything, so we were so thankful to get that space for them to use regularly. Our band booster president, Jennifer Scarlett, and all of the parent guardian volunteers who helped chaperone contests, pack and load equipment and instruments. You can see the picture of our semi-trailer there. It takes a lot of folks to load and unload and move stuff, and it's all very important to what we do, preparing props, helping feed the students meals, everything. And then, like I said, our semi-driver, Mr. Tommy Holmes, he hauled it to competitions across the state, and we're very grateful for his support. And I just have to say, you know, I am so happy that at Orange High School we get to offer a comprehensive curriculum and offerings of ensembles for our band program. And it really just hits every spoke on the wheel. And you can see a list of everything that we offer there. And so we have concerts and performances throughout the school year, and you all are welcome to hop onto our band website and check out our calendar and see everything. But we hope that you will join us for a performance next school year, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to do in the next AIA season. So we're very excited to see their inaugural year and see where it goes from here. So thank you all so much again. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much. Congratulations. They're incredible. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Yes, you too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's good seeing you. Thank you for coming.
Great job.
Thank y'all.
And if there's any group that knows how to perform, then move off the stage for the next minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Anything about the steps? Is it rise or is it one?
They stuck, right? They hit the high one.
Yes.
Just, all right, good. Come on in, folks.
We'll let them come, yeah.
I'm gonna buck against the side for 1 second, thank you.
All right. So Dr. Felder, do we have any recognitions tonight?
Well, I know it just felt like we had recognitions, and indeed we did, but we have 2 recognitions for tonight. So here on your screen, next slide, please. You see just a few of the shining faces from our graduation ceremonies here in Orange County Schools at our 3 high schools, Partnership Academy High, Cedar Ridge High School, and Orange High School. So for tonight, we simply want to elevate some of the high points and draw attention to our truly brilliant graduates of the class of 2023. So these numbers sometimes shift at the last minute, but as we started to the big day on Friday, June 9th, we had 575 students prepared to walk across the stage at this year's 3 graduation ceremonies. The 3 students you see here graduated from Partnership Academy in a beautiful ceremony hosted at Cedar Ridge High School. Later that day, in the spacious Dean Dome, we had 252 seniors graduate from Cedar Ridge High School and 350 seniors from Orange High School. This graduating class had so many highlights, it's hard to identify and celebrate them all, but we can lift up some numbers that put their excellence into context. So the class of 2023 is responsible for earning, and so fasten your seatbelts here, over $6 million in scholarship money for their college and career success. $6 million, over $6 million. Over 72% of the class of 2023 graduated, applied, and received their acceptance to begin either a 2- or 4-year college. So over 72% of the class of 2023. 24 of those graduates are going on to play sports in college at the next level. 10 of our graduates are now preparing to serve our country as members of the military. We celebrated the career and technical education wins for many of our students in areas ranging from engineering to IT software, to web development, animal care management, and agricultural development through Alamance County Community College and/or Durham Tech. And we know about the huge importance of both planning and support for our graduates to turn their dreams of success at the next level into a reality. So our students at Partnership Academy, we were fortunate to have their commencement speaker, Orange County's own Miss Jackie Shelton Green, the North Carolina Poet Laureate and founder of Orange County's own Youth Poet Laureate program. It was an amazing moment, and Ms. Shelton Green shared with our graduates that this was the first time she had the good fortune to name every member of the graduating class during an address. Our ceremonies for both Cedar Ridge and Orange High School featured invitations and welcomes translated sequentially into Spanish. And we were very fortunate to have students representing a diverse variety of backgrounds addressing their fellow graduates. That was so exciting. And their friends and families in both English and Spanish. And it was my pleasure to announce and recognize the 7 sets of twins graduating together in this year's class of 2023. So we want to draw attention to our landing page at graduation.orangecountyfirst.com for more information, and to the photo albums which were posted to social media, thanks to Mr. Smith, and shared by our high schools, with nearly 2,000 photos across 3 graduations. So it's lots of photos, but they speak volumes about what a great celebration June 9th was with graduating our students. And so again, we join our schools, families, and everyone here in Orange County Schools to shout out congratulations to our graduates. We are so proud of each and every one of them and incredibly hopeful for the bright futures ahead of them. So let's give it up for our graduates. Okay, and that brings us to our second recognition, and so we are excited to announce our next and final recognition for this evening. But we also want to make you aware that Orange High School's junior, Gabe Schmid, is not with us tonight in person, but he is here with us virtually. And so, as he has done for the past couple, and this is why he's not here, there's a reason, as he's done for the past couple of summers, he is at a running camp now in Utah after spending last summer in Brevard here in North Carolina. All the extra efforts are clearly paying off, as we are glad to have Coach Brian Schneiderwind. Is Coach Brian Schneiderwind with us? He is. Virtually. Oh, he's joining us virtually as well. Oh, great. Who is also in Utah. Of course he would be. And so both he and Gabe are joining us remotely. So quick introduction. This May, Gabe won his second state title in 3A competition when he ran 3,200 meters or 2 miles in a crazy good time of, get this, 9 minutes and 14.94 seconds, or 20 seconds better than his time in the same event last year. And he has just won, and he was just 2 seconds off the pace for yet another gold medal in the 1,600 meters or the mile at this year's outdoor track and field championships. So congratulations to Gabe, to your family and the school, and to Coach Schwinderwind. Welcome to both of you, and please take a few minutes to help tell the board and our public what's going on. So how did you get back here again soon, and for making North Carolina AT&T this spring. So Gabe, we're turning it over to you and Coach Schwinderwind.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
hear
can.
you.
Okay, I wonder what's going on with my video really quick. You guys, let's see. Okay, well, I guess my video will not work today. I thought it was ready, but
So,
I
gentlemen,
guess
It is working, Gabe, so be
it is
careful.
working? Okay,
Hi,
you guys
this
can see me?
this is Kevin Smith. Glad you could make it. And we can unfortunately see you on a very tiny screen, but not on the big screen. It's part of our tech setup here at
Okay.
King Street instead of Whitted. So, good evening.
Good evening. I can't see myself, so this is interesting.
So, who's going to go first,
Um,
Gabe or Coach Schneiderwind?
I mean, Coach, do you want to go first?
Yeah, let me set it up real quick. And sorry, so I'm actually joining from Michigan. So strangely enough, of the two of us, I feel like I'm the closest geographically here to celebrate. And so thank you to Kevin Smith and to the school board for taking the time to acknowledge Gabe's great accomplishment. And as some of you may remember, Gabe won the cross country state championship, but I just want to highlight that, I think the reality is that the cross country season kind of, both of us feel like was kind of a dream season in that pretty much everything that could have gone well did. But leading up to the state championship, Gabe had a fair amount more curveballs thrown his way. And so I just want to acknowledge how impressed I was with his ability to continue to stay focused, keep a positive mental attitude throughout the different setbacks, and still be able to perform at his best at the end of the season. And I also want to point out finally just that that although we're super happy with his state championship performance, that about a month before that, he ran one of the top 10 fastest times ever in the 2 mile for a junior in the state of North Carolina, regardless of classifications. So Gabe has been working extremely hard to become one of the best distance runners the state of North Carolina has ever seen. So lots of credit to him for being able to handle both the good times and the tougher times, because it's pretty hard to be able to do both of those.
Thank you, Coach. Yeah, this season was definitely as he said, the cross country season was pretty much a dream come true. Everything got in line and everything got where it needed to be. But this season, we started off pretty strong. I went up to New York and I was able to run in the indoor Nike Nationals, and I was able to lay down a very awesome PR. And we were really excited, and we continued through Raleigh Relays in Raleigh, and then we continued also at Arcadia in California, which is the biggest high school meet in the country, and is usually where US #1 is set. And so it was a great honor to be able to, work and be able to get to these great races, but also to, come to the state championship after suffering a little bit of an injury with my foot. I was able to, work really hard, cross training, and just still staying hungry to go grab a state title. And funny enough, maybe you thought our plan was to grab one state title. Our plan was to grab 2, and we came super close, but we were also coming to set a state meet record. And so I guess there's more on the table, but I'm super, super happy that I was able to pull this off, and that I'm able to bring another state title home to my house, but also to Orange High School, because I know it means a ton for my teammates, and it means a ton for my coaches and the school as a whole. And it kind of puts Orange on the map for running and for state champions. And it wouldn't be possible, obviously without Coach pushing me and sending me my workouts every week and really compensating and really working with me individually. He's got a whole track team this year. The track team had over 70 athletes this year for Orange High School. And that is more than it's ever been. And it was I'm super grateful to Shyman for, giving almost every athlete an individual coaching experience, but he gave so much time to me. And that's something that I can never, say I'm grateful for enough. And my mom, and my dad, recently they've been putting a lot of money into me, and they've been able to, hopefully I've been able to show that it's worth it and it's getting somewhere, and hopefully you guys don't have to pay for college. But so I'm super grateful for my parents and all that they do. I'm also thankful for Mr. McCauley. You know, he passed away about a month ago, and he was someone who really supported and went out of their way to, when I was going to go to Nike Cross Nationals, there was a ton of paperwork that needed to be done for me to be able to attend that event. And he was right there with me, trying to get me there, trying to research all the different rules and getting everything filled out. And he did the same for state because we had a couple hiccups. And he's just always been there to, you know, support ever since I, you know, kind of proved myself. He's always been willing to be there. And it's something that he's going to be very missed, and I'm super appreciative of him. And I'm looking forward for Orange for this cross-country season. You know, you guys will probably see us back here and the whole team because, they're hungry. You know, they're at the Speedway almost 3 days a week, and you can catch them running. You know, we're putting in the work, and we're going to come for another state title and bring it home to Hillsborough.
What time at the Speedway, Gabe?
6:30. You can join us. You can come on a bike or something.
That's 6:30 a.m.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm on
In the
it.
morning.
I prefer that time.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun, a lot of conversations, and, you know, it's a great team, and it's a great family, too.
Board, thank you for making the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Good luck out west, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight.
All right. Well, Mr. Atherton, that concludes the recognitions for this evening.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Next on our agenda is the agenda adoption. I am aware of some items to be pulled tonight. Item 3, the pre-K grant, the central mechanical project, and then item 16, the contract extension for after school. Are there any other items that I have missed from anyone from the board? Okay, I would recommend just for agenda adoption that since these are action items, that we would take those up as the items right after our regular discussion action items. Is that acceptable? All right, I will put that in now. Okay, with that, can we get a motion to adopt agenda with consent items moved to the end of section 3?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
The motion is second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Moore?
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, our agenda has been adopted. Next, we have our public comments. The Board of Education welcomes public comments, which are governed by Board Policy 2310 and North Carolina General Statute 143 through 318.17. A person wishing to address the board must sign up prior to the board's regular meeting. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When the 3 minutes end, the speaker must stop speaking immediately. Yielding times to another speaker will not be permitted. All public comments should be civil and non-disruptive. Per policy, board members will listen carefully but will not respond to speakers. Who do we have first tonight?
First up, we have Megan Johnson.
So good evening, board members, Dr. Felder, and all district staff here tonight. My name is Megan Johnson, and I'm currently the school nurse at Evelyn Cheeks. I'm the mother of 2 teenage boys who attend Orange High, and I'm also an Orange County resident. Last night, our nursing team, was informed that our school health technician positions, which are held by Conica Smith and Jennifer Gomez, would no longer be funded, their last day being tomorrow. As you can imagine, we were all blindsided by this information. We are here standing before you tonight to not only advocate for these positions, but also for these 2 professionals who have now been faced with the challenge of having to provide for their families financially on such a short notice. Conica originally came to us through Metasource. She stayed with us with the county in hopes and assurances of a full-time school technician position. She is an asset to our nursing team in Orange County schools. For example, she led the contact tracing team during COVID and facilitated investigations of over thousands of positive and COVID exposure cases. She has obtained her American Red Cross instructor certification, helping to teach hundreds of faculty members CPR and basic first aid. She maintains our school nurse supply inventory, making sure that we have the proper supplies to care for our students. She has also developed invaluable relationships with our students. She encouraged a student who was insistent on not completing high school and was behind on her assignments to follow her dreams. That student revisited her several weeks later, telling her that she was able to get in her missing assignments and her grades drastically improved. Jennifer has also come to us from Metasource. She left for a brief moment, but then came back to us once this position was approved. She's also an asset. One of her many qualities is her ability to speak Spanish. She's connected with our Hispanic population, and she was able to help students with underlying conditions, health conditions, complete school when they otherwise would not have been able to without her support and help. While I've given you just brief statements of why we need these positions in our school system, school technicians just in general are able to provide the care to our students. They help us to complete county and state reports, which allows the school nurses to concentrate on staff training for medication administration, first aid responder response, writing and implementing individual healthcare plans, emergency action plans, community outreach, and school health education for our schools. I appreciate all the hard work that you all do. I know that you want our students to be in a safe and supported environment so they can learn best. I strongly urge you to consider permanent funding for school health technicians.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer Valdez.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Felder, district staff, and all the parents that have shown up tonight. Thank you all for coming out. I've had the pleasure of serving this district since December of this past year, with a few minutes here and there last year as a contact tracer. Board members, the reason I'm here tonight is appealing for my job. As of tomorrow afternoon, I do not have one with Orange County any longer, and I only found out about this yesterday at 4:45 p.m. I have 2 children to feed, and I have looked forward to coming into work every single day. I've been in healthcare for a long time, well over a decade, and this is a special nursing team that you have here. You are blessed as a district to have a nursing team that not only supports and empowers the students in the district, but they care about their health and their wellness and their safety. I've been lucky to support them. And the only way to continue to support them in the way that I feel best and what I feel that this district and these students need is by funding my position. And my colleague at Orange High, because I can say without a doubt that Conica Smith has made an impact at Orange High. I know I've made one at Cedar, and I'm not one to be boastful, but I know that my schools, my teachers, my administrators, and above all else, my students respected me, looked forward to me, and had my ear when they needed it, and I advocated for them in the best possible ways that I could. According to the most recent DPI report that I was able to find online today, in 2021, school nursing in North Carolina is currently at 1 school nurse for 890 students. The recommendation from the State Board of Education is 1 nurse for every 750. Between your 2 high schools, and these are numbers that I pulled this morning from Power School, there are 2,276 students for 2 nursing positions, one of which is still posted on the job website this morning. Myself and Conica made up for the lack of nursing support that is there right now, and notwithstanding, not doubting or diminishing what this board has done to support their nurses, because y'all have stepped up at every step of the way for them. However, I am asking, again, to step up for us, to come for us. I have made efforts at Cedar Ridge. I know for a fact there was a student who came to me because I was the nurse who spoke Spanish. And he asked for a vision exam. And the funny thing about this was I was pretty sure this kid could see, but when I asked Nurse Pepin for assistance with performing the vision exam, we found that that boy could not see where Mr. Chair Atherton is sitting right now. We were able to get him glasses because I was there, because I spoke Spanish, and because he knew that I was there. I'm not one again to be boastful. I would say that Hanukkah and myself are some of the most humble people you ever meet. You ask us to do and we do. We go and we go. We do and we do what we can for this district and ultimately for these students who all of our mission is to support. Board members, I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart, please, please fund myself and my colleague at Orange High, Hanukkah Smith, for the school health technician positions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Price. How do you go after that?
Good evening, my name is Danielle Price. I'm a fourth generation Orange County School graduate, an Orange County School parent, and an active member of our Orange County School community, as well as one of the moderators of our Orange County School parent page on Facebook. I'm a supporter of Orange County Schools and invest a great deal of my time with other parents, with teachers and staff throughout our district, which brings me to the reason that I'm here to speak this evening. I was troubled in our redistricting committee meeting by the push of points of pride information that was highlighted on our district website. Last year, it is awesome that 10 of our 12 schools exceeded growth, but yet at the same time, our district, which is one of the best funded districts in our state, fell below the state average for proficiency. Consider that 70% of our African American, Hispanic, and economically disadvantaged students didn't even perform at grade level. So I'm asking, it's the end of June. Why are we talking about last year at all? Why aren't we talking about how our schools did this year? What went well? And what didn't work for us? This comes as a personal affront to parents that are paying out of pocket for tutoring services because our district has failed to provide a qualified teacher in their classroom. To students who are struggling, to teachers who continue to feel unsupported. Why are we patting ourselves on the back? And based on information from 2 years ago, no less. There's no question that we are all proud of our children and of our teachers, especially since this has been quite a challenging year. Something else to ponder would be that our students and teachers may not feel safe in our school. And at this point, it's not about race or gender identity, it's because of the lack of consistent discipline that spiraled out of control. And we now have a handful of students that are being allowed to disrupt our classrooms, recess, and times that our kids so desperately need. Another point to contemplate is that our teachers and our district staff are not often accessible. It's become increasingly difficult to schedule parent-teacher conferences or to connect with necessary district staff to ensure that our students are on track. Oftentimes, parent requests for information are ignored and even pushed aside. But parents have known to tolerate it because we know that our teachers are covering for staff shortages and absenteeism. They're overwhelmed by countless initiatives that are being pushed from our district on top of their everyday tasks, learning recovery, behavior management, and a myriad of other things left over from COVID. But none of this serves the best interest of our children and our families. And didn't we say that our children and our families deserve better? While I wholeheartedly welcome celebrating our amazing teachers and students, we can't lose sight of our purpose. And now that we're at the end of this very difficult year, I'd like to know how we did this year, and when can we expect that information? Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Ebony Freeland.
I've known Danielle her whole life, so I know she knows I'm married.
Sorry.
Ebony Freeland Bryant, good afternoon. I'm Orange County School graduate as well, Gravely Hill parent and rising Cedar Ridge parent now, and I'm still the Gravely Hill PTSO president, sorry. It's been a while since I've been here, but I mostly stand to celebrate the Gravely Hill community for sticking and staying, surviving and standing through staff challenges, leadership changes, and a principal search we are very happy about, Ms. Williamson. But I stand to remind you, the Board of Education and the district, of the important job you have to hold up your call to protect and promote an equitable district from the farthest corners of the county. I say to remind you in the face of today's court decision that though it focused on college and grad school admissions, we will still see it vibrate down to the opportunities that our students have here. The diversity of our students and how we celebrate and support them must remain top of mind. And while I'm here, I'll just add in that as a parent of a student with a heart condition who benefited greatly from the support of Nurse Johnson at Evelyn Cheeks and Nurse Payne at Gravely and the whole nursing team, please, please, let's be forerunners in how we treat them. Let's be forerunners in how we honor our teachers and our staff. We find the money for a lot of things. I've been in higher education for over 22 years, and we do what we want to do. But please don't leave our kids lacking. I've seen the harm, and I would love to celebrate the joy. So as I came up here tonight, I thought about that in this month, over 25 years ago, I walked across the stage at Orange High School. And at the time, I didn't think it meant much more than the ending of a chapter and the beginning of the next. But what I've realized over the last several months is that it was the day I took on the mantle of being an alumna of this district. And it is the day that I remember every time I show up in a school, when I show up at this building or at a meeting. I want to be able to celebrate that calling with pride. And I ask tonight that you please, please help me to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lori Tepper.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to express my concerns about Dr. Felder and some of her staff breaking a current policy set in place, 2320, regarding compliance with the open meetings law, and stating the laws that may be put in place by our state legislator will not be upheld. This happened on May 24th at the Pride in the Profession panel discussion, sponsored and promoted by Dr. Felder and her Chief Equity Officer, Mr. Williams, who stated that the meeting was not allowed to be recorded. In fact, if someone was to be found recording, they would have been asked to leave, and if they didn't comply, they would be escorted out. This violates Article 33C of Chapter 143 of the General Statutes, broadcasting or recording meetings. Mr. Williams asked the questions, and the following are some of the disturbing responses to me. Mrs. Warren Robinson replied that she makes sure students know who she is, and they feel comfortable talking to her about questions regarding their sexuality. I don't understand why teachers feel the need to tell their students about their sexuality. It is irrelevant. They're there to teach, and there's no need for it in the classroom. The panel spoke about experiences with the Pride movement, how excited they were to be focused on and teaching the Pride curriculum in the month of May in preparation for June Pride Month. They were enthusiastic about the recent distribution of Pride materials and slides sent to teachers across the county. However, none of those materials were distributed to parents. Again, there's a lack of transparency. Is Pride Month considered curriculum and part of EOG? Don't we have failing schools in our district? Dr. Felder felt this topic was a priority since she attended the meeting and focused on it during the final weeks of the year. Ms. Markham stated our Pride slides are now in policy, pushed by the district. If parents come to complain, tough, because there won't be any opting out because this is what you are here for. She also stated, we're starting with the babies, and I am on day 6 of the Pride slides in my class. Is this the attitude we want from our teachers? In response to the pending state law that would restrict the teaching of this material to preschoolers through 3rd grade, Mr. Williams responded, the central office is not going to uphold the law when it's passed. Ms. Markham stated that teachers are already saying that they are not going to obey the law if it is passed, and Dr. Felder stated she would be out of a job. She also stated wholeheartedly, yes, please teach it, when Mr. Williams asked if they were able to actively teach Pride Month. Academic achievement and benchmarking goals have been sidelined to focus on identity politics. How about celebrating American Exceptionalism Month? Celebrate the facts of what it means to live in a free country and how we got here and the unity of being Americans instead of causing division between gay and straight students. Board members, we elected you to not only set policy and direction for the local school district, but to serve with integrity, honesty, and trustworthiness. One final request. I would ask that you consider writing policy that restricts teachers from using classroom time to openly talk about their personal sexuality.
Thank you.
Okay, David Kolbinski.
Bearer of good news and bad news, thank you for listening to us tonight. It's the first time I've been back to this room since 2000. Yeah, after 9 years of serving on the Board of Education with Susan Halkiotis. When we came on board, we opened Standback Elementary, and then we finished renovations at CW Stanford. We opened a year-round school. We set up the program with Freddie McNeil and the Men of Distinction. We also opened and built Pathways, and of course, we hired Ray DeBrule, who worked alongside Steve Halkiotis to be the prime contractors in the building of Cedar Ridge High School. And I woke up the other day and realized it's been 20 years since that happened. Now, the good news is I watched last week's, or the last board meeting, and I saw the superintendent's roundtable. And I felt that someone had heard the cries of the parents that I read or saw on the Truth of OCS website, that the teachers were disenfranchised, felt marginalized, and were below morale. It was great to see the teachers being empowered, listened to, given the authority to make decisions about their own. I'm a person who lives in the moment because I don't have a whole lot of moments left. So not long ago, it became apparent that there were problems in the school system, which I wasn't aware of because I had just, when I checked out, my kids went on to college, we went on to college. And I knew that Steve Halkiotis was someone in the system that I had trusted. I knew him when he was on our payroll here. We knew him when he was principal. And so I asked him, Steve, what's wrong? He said the board had become politicized. And so it's, what can we do, Steve? He gave me the name of several people here. So I hope it's happening, but I want to refer to what Lori Tepper said, that you had a meeting in which it was said that when asked about the state or the public support for the LGBTQ curriculum, it was said that we've already put that into place, and when the parents come to complain, tough, and there'll be no opting out. And I want to tell you that the people of Orange County do not feel that we're co-parenting our children with government. The school board has been taken over by a political agenda. And one thing we tried to do when we were on the board is we realized while we had camps vying for our election, we represented every person in the county. And it's your responsibility to find out what the disagreements are and then help the community work together for compromise for the benefit of the children.
Thank you.
Earl Top.
Good evening, and appreciate the chance to speak tonight. I have got two kids that graduated from Cedar Ridge, and we've been here for over 20 years and always had a keen interest in what's happening in our schools here in Orange County. And, I've been to about every meeting for this past year, literally almost every one of them, maybe with two exceptions. And I came tonight just to share a couple of observations that, as I reflect on this past year, that kind of in my mind. And, you know, one of them, look, I consider myself a fair person, and I like to give credit where credit is due. And so celebrations are good, and they're appropriate a lot of times. You know, but clearly it's not the fundamental reason we are here. And we kind of need to have some perspective about that. I think there's a lot of times it's appropriate to celebrate, but again, you got to keep focused on what the main goal is. And so, you know, for example, we've celebrated growth. We've celebrated some growth numbers, and you know, okay, on the one hand that sounds good, but on the other hand, I think the reality here is that their numbers were so low, the performance was so low, that just a very modest amount of improvement showed up as a pretty significant increase. So, you know, there's two real differentiating and concerning sides to that story. And so while we're doing all the celebrating, I have noted there's some very serious things throughout the year that concern me greatly, and I just want to hit on a couple of them. The teaching positions going unfilled, even when there was good discussion from the board, it just didn't seem like anything got done with that. Of course, we know about Gravely Hill and a lot of math vacancies there. Mobile units that were approved last fall, and they still aren't in place at Eflin Cheeks. And one of the most incredible things was in April, at the board meeting where, you know, there was essentially a funding crisis, and upon asking about when it was known by the staff, it was said that it was known about in December. And I just find that pretty incredible, and I have to wonder about the relationship between the district and the board when things like that happen. Students are leaving, teachers are leaving. We've got very, very modest, almost no growth in students, and yet the budget request is very significant. So, look, I was in banking for 35 years, and when people celebrate, when people are always celebrating and tell you how wonderful they're doing, you kind of learn over time that maybe there's something more going on here, and I think a lot of time it masks some fundamental deficiencies, and I think that's what we're looking at. I appreciate the chance to speak.
Thank you.
Katie Harper.
Thank you. I wanted to apologize for my coughing fit earlier. I have consistently tested negative for COVID, and I didn't cough all day until 7. So thank you for taking public comment tonight. I did want to say that I think a lot of the difficulties that we face in our district do not exist in a vacuum, and that there are teacher vacancies across the state. The proficiency numbers that we see in Orange County schools are in part a product of the charter schools that pull some of our most well-resourced students and some of the highest scoring students in the district into charter schools. So we have a different population in Orange County schools than compared to other districts in the state. I do want to thank the district for everything that they have done to prepare our community for the important work of redistricting. I also want to thank the district for the recent Pride in the Profession event. The teachers I know who attended that event said it was invaluable. Thank you for leading the way in making our district an inclusive one where LGBTQ students and staff are welcome, seen, and celebrated. Lastly, I wanted to ask publicly why Dr. Felder's contract has not yet been renewed. I've been looking at the personnel reports and watching the local news sources, but there's been no mention of a contract extension beyond the current 2025 end date. 2025 sounds like a long way off for a lot of us, but it is not a long way off for top-tier superintendents who are focused on supporting school districts in reaching their goals to serve all students equitably. Dr. Felder came to our district because of our previous board's stated commitment to equity and to addressing long-standing, decades-long disparities in academic achievement. Dr. Felder's team is making strides in addressing those disparities. We have more teachers of color working in our district every year. In 2019, when Dr. Felder started, 13% of our educators were teachers of color. In 2022, 20% of our teachers are now teachers of color. We have a long ways to go, but Dr. Felder and her team are leading us in the right direction. She has revamped our early literacy programs. My children have benefited from that. She has built a culture across the district of not only being forthright about disparities, which is the first step, but also being creative in addressing them, which is the work that we must all share in. The work that other parents have spoken to this evening. We are about to embark on redistricting, a redistricting that is years overdue. Please give district leadership your support, and please extend Dr. Felder's contract at the soonest date possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all.
All right. Next, we have board comments. Mr. Richmond?
Yes, I really want to say congratulations to the class of 2023. It was very, very exciting and heartfelt to attend all 3 high schools graduations. And there were some great comments, and we had a lot of students speak at those graduations, and they did a wonderful job. So it was a lot of goosebumps coming from me because it was mentioned earlier, you know, I graduated from Orange High School, so, you know, I had that reminiscence of graduating again, so it was great to be there, and congratulations to all those students.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Sure. First, I want to thank the people that came out tonight and for speaking courageously about things that are really important for us to hear. So thank you all for that. And it's been heard, I promise. I have a couple of just some information from the community. I wanted to say thanks to Beverly Hester Stevens, Sherry Stinson, and the Mount Zion Village for including our board and Dr. Felder in their Education Sunday. You know, in this difficult education time, community support makes all the difference in the world. So Mount Zion recognized their students. And I might mention also that the same last Sunday, Mount Bright and White Cross also celebrated their students. So thank you to the churches and thank any churches that want us. You know, we really want to be out there because we need your help to support these kids. Second, if you remember about a month or so ago, we had the Orange Partnership for Alcohol and Drug-Free Youth came and spoke to our board, Guyon Chambliss. They're working to raise awareness around synthetic THC and synthetic cannabis. They are now working with Sly Grange and North Carolina Grange, and the legislature does have a bill, House Bill 563, which is gonna improve the governance of these drugs and their access to kids. So I think that's a wonderful development. And third is, as redistricting gets underway, I wanted the board and the public to be aware that Orange County has proposed revisions to SAFO, which is the ordinance that governs the capacity of our schools. They're proposing relaxing that. We have a draft. I would actually like to see that draft and make it available to the board and the public, and understand how it might impact our redistricting proposal. Thank you.
Right. Ms. Smiley?
Great. Well, happy Pride Month, everyone. As we close out Pride Month, I'm not usually one to wear thematic t-shirts to board meetings, but it has been a particularly difficult week for LGBTQ+ youth in North Carolina. Several harmful bills have advanced to the governor that are threatening to gender non-conforming students necessary health care. There is a Don't Say Gay bill that would make us some version of Florida where you can't talk about students' families. And so it's a really difficult time, and for that to come during Pride Month, I think is really challenging. As a district, I am proud of the progress that we have made over the past few years, and yet there's a lot of work to do. And so I just wanted to say that to our LGBTQ+ students, I see you, I love you. You deserve a better world than this one, the one we're living through right now. But I pledge to work with you to help make it a better one, and I hope you hang in there. The news out of the Supreme Court today around affirmative action, one of the speakers mentioned it again. It's not directly related through K through 12, but I did want to say that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent talks a lot about University of North Carolina, and North Carolina in particular, and the history in the country of the accumulation of racial discrimination and how that shows up today, and then how UNC's actual admissions process works and how it considers the complexity of individuals. It was really fascinating reading. I recommend it for everybody. And then the last point I have is just I do continue to believe that we need additional nursing support at the high schools. You know, this is something that I advocated for in the budgeting process. We asked the commissioners for it, as a specific item, all different ways. But I really do think that it seems like our ratios are off at the high school level, and we need additional support there.
All right.
Well, I would like to just add to what Sarah's saying, and I see friends here that are nurses, and I know what the nurses do in Orange County Schools because I've lived it. And you are appreciated, and I think we need to do something. I'll just leave it at that. I did attend, and I follow up with what Andre said, that with graduation this year, it was absolutely wonderful to see the three schools graduate. I also attended the award ceremony for both high schools, Cedar Ridge and Orange High, and that was also very, very nice to see. I was invited to come out to the Juneteenth celebration at Mount Zion. I had a wonderful time out there. It was like a history lesson. I told them when they asked me to stand up and finally speak, I said, there's nothing I can say because it was just so full of history. Reverend Allison gave just a wonderful talk about his life and what he had done, and it was fascinating. And then this past Sunday, I went back out for the student recognition at Mount Zion. And one thing I have told them at Mount Zion that I really appreciate them for is the fact that they have their students participating in things and have them standing up and talking in front of people and getting used to being in front of people. And I knew that from the students that I had when I was at Stanford and at Orange, that because they would tell me, they would say, I have to speak at church this week. And it was always Mount Zion. And so I praised them because I knew that they have done that for so long that it is, and Danielle is one of them, I think.
Different church.
Yes, for church. But it makes a difference. It just makes a difference for children to learn how to get up and speak and be in front of people at an early age. And so I openly tonight applaud them again for that because they're masters at it. That's all I have.
Okay. To the phone, Dr. Moore had said she has no comments tonight. Ms. Doyle?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Really appreciate everything I've heard so far tonight. I attended a lot of graduation events as well. Enjoyed all of our graduations. And wanted to give a shout out to a couple special events that were collaborations between our district leaders and our school leaders. I found the Pride in the Profession a really important first event of its kind, creating a safe space for our LGBTQ staff and parents. I heard from many parents about how important it was that they felt like their kids were represented and supported by staff there. I also attended our Orange High School teacher conference that had a keynote speaker who spoke to her immigrant experience, her own personal experience, and her experience as an educator. She really spoke to a portion of our student body that has grown a lot. You know, we're at 27% multi-language learners, and so it was excellent to hear a speaker speak to that student experience and to teachers in the classroom. And I also felt privileged to be able to attend the 2-day Beyond Diversity and Courageous Conversation training with all of our school principals and assistant principals and district leaders. It was excellent. I really appreciate Mr. Williams and his team facilitating all of that event with the Pacific Education Group who came out, and there was just a lot of sharing there's a lot of openness and vulnerability and willingness to learn that, and also camaraderie and support that I saw between principals and other leaders, and I was glad to be a part of it and learn as well. That's all I have, thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dahl. So I would just like to say, you know, just add on a lot of passion tonight about lots of items, and I appreciate all the board comments. One item that I didn't hear mentioned that I'll bring up is, you know, appreciation of our own board equity training. You know, even through a power outage and other things, you know, we were able to come together and have some very difficult conversations, and I just wanted to thank all board members for taking the time to do that. I do want to acknowledge our nurses as well. It's a very difficult job. Some healthcare for some of our families, the only method. We continue to find our schools as being our social safety net, and it is very challenging. And a lot of times we have no idea things until y'all come before us, so we really appreciate that. And I wanted to thank everybody for coming out to speak tonight. I know there's lots of things going on, but thank you for coming out tonight. All right, we have a very full agenda, so I'll keep us going on that. First item is our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the modified personnel report? Or addendum, I should say.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Thank y'all. All right, the next item we have is for discussion, is board policy 4342, student searches and new regulations for searches. Dr. Felder, who do we have to speak on that tonight?
Speaking on that tonight, actually, Mr. Appleton, you're listed, Mr. Obley and Joyce Hatcher.
All right.
So, and Andrew Poole, are you also?
I can if need be.
So staff are outside of the room, and so we just need to get them in.
So as they're coming in, I'll just give some background on this. This is existing policy that the district brought before the policy committee and had requested some changes. And there was a lot of verbose conversations around this. And I think several items that were brought up, and I think is important for the community here, because there are a lot of misconceptions on how searches and things like this are done, and I think it's important for the community to hear that. So with that, do we have someone that can share the process?
Yes, so, Mr. Poole, are you speaking on behalf of Mr. Obley?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. So for, just like you said, some misconceptions. Obviously, bringing canines into the schools. Obviously, I know there's some people for it, there's some people against it. This is just a tool. It's a free tool, I might add, that is readily available at our disposal to help keep this district as safe as possible. Not just students, but every single person who walks on these campuses, okay? One of the misconceptions I want to clear up, that we will never have a canine, a dog, go up and actually sniff a student. We've never lined students up to sniff them. There's policy, there's regulations that we will make sure that we abide by, because obviously we want to make sure that we are as equitable as possible and also as transparent as possible. But transparent, obviously, we want to make sure that we let the parents, the community, know what we're doing in the schools. Obviously, to an extent, we can't disclose everything we're doing when it comes to safety and security. But equitable, we want to make sure that the students who want to show up and learn in a safe environment, the staff who want to show up and teach in a safe environment, that we give them that opportunity, okay? I can answer any questions. I don't know exactly what y'all want me to hit on tonight.
I think it's important to your point on the actual process of a search, which could be for drugs, could be for explosive devices and others. And one of the common things we hear is that we line the kids up in front of their bags and the dog walks in front of them, which is completely not true of how that's done. So if you could, well, one, it's random, when that's done, and the second, just the process. So they've decided to have this search at a school. Just take us through what that looks like. Where will the students physically be? You know, there's concerns that the dogs are going to be in front of the kids while this is going on. So I think it's important for you to just share how that would work.
Okay. Yeah, so correct. These are random searches. Obviously, there is a lot of coordination that goes into it because, you know, working in conjunction with the sheriff's office, there's a lot that plays into it behind the scenes. Now, for instance, I mean, there can be anything from classrooms to locker rooms to hallways to parking lots, just to name a few areas that could be searched. But I'll just give an example of a classroom, just to. So if we were to search a classroom, obviously, before any of this happens, the superintendent obviously has to be made aware. Then I will be involved, administration for that school will be involved, the sheriff's office will be involved. There's a predetermined random selection that will take place. Now, when we show up to a school, obviously, classroom, for instance, administration, they'll go into the classroom, they'll let the teacher know, hey, I'll need your classroom to step out. We'll give them an opportunity to get as far away from the classroom as possible to where they won't even see the dog. This is obviously a separation. This will be, it could be anything from an anxiety separation, it can be allergies, whatever it may be, but we obviously want to make sure that we are looking at that fair and equitable standpoint as well, where the classroom, the canine handler, they won't see whose book bag, and obviously the dog, I mean, they're not biased. Anyway, once the classroom's out, obviously the dog with trained canine handler, they'll come in, they'll do their sweep. If they alert on anything, at that point, the school administration, they will be notified. Administration, they'll ask the teacher whose belongings are these. Once we figure out who the student is, they will be taken to more than likely the office, some secure area away from other classmates. And then that is where the investigation will continue. So administration, they do a very good job. They know who their students are. So, you know, let's say so-and-so's book bag happens to get a positive alert. At that case, that's where you start investigating. You start talking. An administrator, principal, AP, they'll start asking, hey, this isn't like you or whatnot. They'll just start leaning into those questions, and then potentially a search could come further.
So one other thing I think that's important to highlight in this policy is we are doing the statistics of these searches and who's being identified and the results. So that is something new as well in the policy. I'll just open it up to questions from board members around this. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. And I know I had raised most of the questions and concerns about this policy in the first place, so I just wanted to say thank you for taking it back to the policy committee and looking at these things. And I was happy to see the record keeping section included so that we can keep track of how often contraband is or is not found, how often things are being referred, demographics of the students searched, et cetera. So I appreciate that. And I also saw a number of clarifications to the procedures as well, and so just wanted to thank you all for those. So the the line about teachers keeping an eye on suspicious behavior without a clear definition of what that means, right? You took that. I saw a number of those improvements to make sure that it was clear and precise and could be administered fairly. So just want to thank you, whoever was involved in that clarification, for doing that. I think the only thing I would like to clarify even further in the record keeping section, well, there's two things. One is, I want to make sure that it is clear that the record keeping should include the data regarding any further individual searches. So a lot of my concern is about when a student is identified and brought to the office, how often is that actually accurate, and is there any disparate impact of that process? And so I would like to request that we add in that G record keeping section, it will include the details about the search, including location, date, time, etc. I just want to make sure it's clear that this includes those further individual searches. So I would like to add, after the first sentence, this should include the data regarding any further individual searches. So not sort of summary statistics of we searched a classroom of students and here's the demographics of the students of the classroom. That's not the intent of that, right? It's the intent of the targeting. So I just want to make sure that that is clear. So I'd like to request that we add that. And then the other thing is an annual report to the board. To me, maybe we get to a world where annual is right, but I would prefer to see a report to the board, since we're beginning this more frequently, like quarterly or something. We're supposed to be doing quarterly discipline reports. I think something like quarterly would be appropriate as we're getting it going. So those are the two things that just wanted to share appreciation for the careful consideration of the procedures, and then request those changes.
Bonnie?
I just, what the feedback I'm getting from parents is that they would like to understand the policy and be informed on it at the beginning of the year. So they don't want to have to be expected to read our, long, many policies. But is there a way that we can educate parents at the beginning of the year that this policy?
It's part of the policy.
That
It says
parents-
notices, school principals shall have reasonable steps to
So
provide
the
the
process
policy.
is the principals will specifically educate and inform parents at the beginning of the year.
Yes,
that
and
this
then,
policy is-
and then we also added, parents and guardians will be notified promptly as possible of individual searches by school administrations of children's persons or belongings. Parents, guardians will also be promptly notified of any random canine searches conducted at their children's school. So we have multiple levels of those
So
notifications.
they'll be notified, they'll be educated at the beginning that this is our policy, and then they'll be educated, they'll be informed.
That one had
on-
occurred. All right, any other
Thank you.
comments or questions? Andrea?
Well, I have a couple, sorry, just wanted to raise my hand.
Sure. I can't, so Ms. Dahl, so
Right.
Dr. Moore, I can't see anything, so.
Right, I
so
got
please
you.
just
Yeah,
speak
no,
up.
I just
Okay.
jumped on because I didn't know
Sure.
what you could see, so I don't know if anyone else was talking first.
No, go ahead, Andrea, if you don't mind.
So I just wanted to add too, from my experience, that these dogs are used for more than just drugs. It states it here in the policies, at some point, speaking of explosives and all of that. So they are used for that, and they're used as article searches too. So if we have a student that's missing from campus, we can do an article search on their book bag or their coat or their shoes, whatever they last wore or the last location they were in, and we can try to locate the students that way as well. And from my experience in law enforcement, we have never ever lined students up and had dogs just go by students and sniff them out. And usually when those searches are done within the schools, you have your school resource officer there and the principal there as well, observing what the dog is doing while this search is taking place.
Thank you, Andrea. Ms. Dahl, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple things, and I appreciate Sarah's comment about follow up after the search. But before that, I have a problem with students in the hallway, and I understand what Andre was saying and what Mr. Poole was saying, that, you know, it's not that kids are going to be lined up in the hallway and dogs would walk by the kids in the hallway, but I just would really prefer that language is changed, that they're in another room. You know, the potential for interaction in the hallway concerns me. And so that's on page 2 for the classroom search procedures. And then I know some of this comes, you know, some of this, sometimes we write these details in policy, and then obviously the procedure is what Dr. Felder and her team would come up with for some of these details. But I do also want to raise the concern about the follow-up with any alerts and how that can be designed in the procedure in a way that is equitable and consistently applied.
Just a thought on Ms. Doyle's point about preferring a sort of a classroom or another space if when leaving the original classroom. I'm just thinking about that always isn't always possible. So it says teachers will escort students into the hallway or another location nearby. I'm wondering if we could flip it to sort of be into another classroom or school room, or the hallway if one is not available, or something like that. I mean, procedurally, if that actually works for how it should work. You know, I think this is more of an operational issue, obviously, but just wanted to throw that out there as a possible way to address that.
So swapping the.
Yeah, teachers will escort students into
Another space.
a nearby available space, or the hallway if one is not available, or something like that.
That sounds good.
I don't know, again, this is the procedures, so I really kind of defer to you all on how to do that best, but, you know, I see that.
Can I?
Sure.
Well, as somebody who's done these, you're trying to do it in a very short amount of time, because you're disrupting the class, number one. And you wanna do it and get it over with and get the kids back in the classroom as quickly as possible. And you know, it's not always possible to get them into another classroom because the classrooms are being used generally during that time. But I know that when we did it at Sanford, if we came out of a classroom, the kids could go around the corner, because the school was designed that way, that you could go around the corner and stand outside of another classroom or across the hall from the classroom up against the lockers. And you didn't have to see it. But one thing I did find, and Andre can probably attest to this too, most of the kids want to see the dog. The dog is a big draw for a lot of those kids, and they want to see that dog and rub that dog, and sometimes it's more of a job to keep them off the dog than it is getting them out of the classroom, because they just love dogs. But
If I could just chime in on that, I've seen the opposite, where the dogs can be traumatizing. So we don't know what a child's background experience is, and I would err on the side of caution, and to the extent possible, have children in a space where they wouldn't see the dog necessarily.
All right, other comments? All right, so this is for action. So do we have a motion to approve the policy 4342 with the recommended changes that Ms. Smiley had given? That includes Ms. Stoll's request? So moved?
Well, I wonder, board members, if there's, in terms of wordsmithing it, if you want to give any direction to the superintendent, working with your board attorney within the bounds of, you know, the language that was proposed, or to approve it with that actual language, just if you want to have an opportunity to see it again or to further refine it, it's at your discretion.
So I'm comfortable with the wording that Ms. Smiley had given, and we have definitely reviewed this a few times, so I personally would be okay with Ms. Smiley's wording. If you need be, we can have her read it back again.
No,
No? Okay,
just ask.
okay, unless, is there some other feeling on this? Anyone? I'm saying no.
I'm fine with the changes that Ms. Smiley made.
Okay, and so we have a motion from Mr. Richmond,
Second?
second from Ms. Hauser. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl.
No.
Yes, and Dr. Moore. All right, that's unanimous. All right, the next item we have on the agenda, thank you so much.
Wait, Will, can I just ask, I couldn't hear Jennifer, I'm not sure, did she vote yes?
Yes.
I thought that's who we heard. We heard two different yeses. Dr. Moore, are you there? Can you tell us online if Dr. Moore is there?
She is there.
I said no.
Oh, you said no. Okay, so we have 6 yeses and 1 no. All right, second reading carries. All right, the next agenda item is the employee advocate ombudsman discussion. This one should be quick. So last time we had a discussion on this, one of the discussion points was to potentially bring this discussion to the policy committee. And after discussing with the board attorney on that, the recommendation was to not do that because it's really policy, and this is more of a job role and description. And the recommendation was to create a committee to go create a job role description and then bring that back to the board for full discussion, because that's the next step we were at, was let's see some of the roles and responsibilities so we could have a discussion and trying to separate the how and the what. So this is just being brought forward as a potential recommendation to form a committee to do this work. So I'll step back and get thoughts from other board members or ideas.
So would that, just in terms of the scope of that committee's charge, would it be also considering, one of the things we talked to, I am not confident that we should budget for an entire ombuds, for example, if that's what it is in our budget, but consider in the first year, but consider outsourcing like a part-time or something, just given the size of our district and the amount of that spend. So would that be within the scope of the committee to sort of weigh a recommendation of that? Or would this be an assumption that it's a full-time position in the district as opposed to other models of providing these services?
The committee, we could tell the committee to come back with that recommendation. I know one of the things that when we were asking about the potential cost and what this would look like, I know HR had said, well, you first have to get a job description to be able to tell what it would be. So we could ask that committee to come up with a job description and a recommendation and a cost around that to bring back to the board for discussion. The main thing was that this work, if we tried to do this as a full board, would be probably very painful. But anyway, but we could give that direction as well to that committee to bring back the recommendation on cost and full-time, part-time, or we can ask them to come back with options around that.
Yeah, I just think the most important thing to clarify is what is the objective of the, I'll call it a role, like not a position, like of this role in the district.
Ms. Hauser?
And to that point, I think the board needs to, before the committee goes to work, needs to provide some clarity on what the purpose of this is, right? Because I don't want the committee to come back, with 4 options. We've talked about it being part of staff, we've talked about it being reporting to the board, you know, and I think we as a board should decide that before the committee gets into the details on it. I know I have some pretty clear views, I don't know how the board members feel.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
my recommendation would be that the committee, provide some, work together to document the options, and then bring that to the board to select one, and then if there's further work to do, then to actually write a job description and things like that, they could do that. But-
All right, I'm struggling with what would be different in the job role on the reporting structure. I mean, it seems like that would be an option, but I think the job scope or role or their job description and purpose would remain the same unless I'm missing something.
I don't want to speak for you, but I think
Yeah,
what you're
no,
saying is
please
you wanna
don't.
make sure that that the board is aligned on the purpose.
Right.
Yes.
Before we go and do anything more detailed,
Yeah.
which I agree with. But I think that my suggestion of a pathway of that is let's identify a committee, have that committee lay out some options for purpose or make a recommendation for purpose or something that then the board decides on.
I guess we've talked about it 3 times, so I feel like, I would be interested in hearing what board members see. Oh, you know, are we talking about another position? You know, one option we talked about was a position reporting to HR. Is that an option here? Or is that off the table? Well, that's the
Yeah,
question. If that's off the table, then we don't want the committee to come back to us and share that as an option.
But,
Right.
I mean, again, I don't know how that would change what they would be physically doing. Like, if you said they reported to HR or the superintendent or the board, what in their job description would change? Like, would they not do something now that they would have done? That's the part I'm not connecting.
So just and having read so many possible job descriptions about this, you know, they're everything from facilitators to someone that helps people navigate the policies and procedures of the organization and figure out who to talk to versus a real employee advocate. That's someone that the employees would call and say, I'm having a problem, help me, and be my advocate. And I think they're very different roles, and there's some that I have less interest in and some that I think will, and I think the board needs to have that conversation.
I think that's what we're doing.
Right, well, that's why before it goes to committee, that we should have that conversation and say, what do we want out of the position?
What could be helpful about the committee clarifying that is that the committee could at least do the work of sort of documenting this in a simple way about those distinctions, and then bring it back and we have a vote, you know, I mean, that's kind of that was my thought. Either that or we hash it out some more in board meetings, which just feels kind of inefficient.
Yeah, I'm very concerned. That's why we originally talked about the policy committee trying to do something. And I did collect a lot of the comments and thoughts around that. And I had sent that to Neil with the intentions of, okay, policy. And he was like, no, this is not an appropriate forum to do that. Especially if you're talking about a job role, that should be in another. So what parameters, Bonnie, would you like to put around this as part of the discussion
Yes.
before we go to?
My feeling is that it's a position reports to the board, and that they are an advocate, because, you know, I mean, you could get so lost in the rhetoric around this stuff, but, you know, I'm really interested in someone who our employees can call and say, I need help, and they can advocate for them. And which means, and the advocate would come with them or separately, but would advocate to them, to the board. But, you know, see this as their person. You know, they're not a mediator, they're not a mediator or facilitator. I don't believe our employees need that. I think they really want someone else that's on their side.
Other thoughts?
Anyone else?
Sarah?
Yeah, I guess, I like the direction where this is going with the suggestions that the committee would look both, again, at the, whether it's an employee, advocate, the ombudsman, whether it's part-time, full-time, you know, we obviously have other funding decisions to make as well. So, you know, we were talking about other positions in need of funding tonight as well, including nurses. We have a whole bunch of things we're trying to decide what to do with our local budget. So, is the committee just going to be board members, or are we going to have staff? Like, how much staff time should we be using to support the committee when we haven't made a commitment to funding this position? I realize we need to know more about the different options. But what would the committee, who would be on this committee in terms of staff helping facilitate some of these determinations?
I mean, I'll just throw it out there. I would think that once the committee got to a point that it agreed on what the role is, then there would need to be HR to help identify cost. But I don't think staff would be needed in the discussion around getting to that. But I mean, again, it's whatever the will of the board is on this, because if it's too big, I agree with you. I hadn't considered that there's a lot of staff involved with this, mainly the board members getting together and trying to get, I think, Sarah, to your words, simplify, you know, this is what it looks like, here's the options, okay, here's some costs that go with those options. And then if the board wanted to tweak some of it, it would happen at the board level versus trying to hash that out in one of these regular meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other comments? So what's the will of the board to move forward with a committee?
What kind of timetable are you thinking about for this committee? How much time is it? Is it one meeting to just talk about it? And so it's
The committee has to decide. I mean, that's, whoever wants to be on the committee, that's the commitment of the committee agreeing when they're gonna be able to meet, how frequent, and to bring something back to the board, because all committees have to have a defined end. So we would definitely have to say the committee's purpose is to bring back a recommendation, and at that point, that would be the end of the committee. We could say over the summer and
That's
bring
what
it
I was saying,
back.
before the start of the school year. There's a
Right.
question about what's the urgency for this? You know, is this something that's gonna go next year? Is this for next year's budget? Is this for, you know, the start of the school year? Because these are,
So I think a lot of us would like to see it as part of the consideration as we determine funding, because we would need to know how much it is and then also how it fits in the overall priority. But it's hard to do that without knowing what the role would be.
so is the committee gonna decide options? Or is the committee gonna describe the role under the option of facilitator, employee advocate, or whatever? Are they gonna look at all the options? There's many, we've seen 30 position descriptions for this.
Yeah, it's, the committee has to come to a consensus to bring something forward. And I have no idea what they would come up with.
Yeah.
And obviously the board can always say, no, that's not, as a whole, that's not what we want, so.
This is where I think having a two-part process where we lay out some options. There are some pieces of this that are clear, like choice points and differences, like fundamental differences in the role.
Mhm.
That I think we need board clarity on
Right.
first before getting deeper into the specifics of how it would work or whatever, you know.
That's thank you, Sarah.
so-
That's exactly
So we
my
could,
concern.
we could create a committee to go forth and bring forward a recommendation on just the role with no cost until we
I think we're
agree.
saying something else, Will. I think we're
Okay.
saying that before the committee goes and does all this detailed work, that the board should decide on what it is we're asking them to look at. Why are we doing this, and what are we asking them to develop what are we asking them to do?
We're asking, sorry.
Yeah, and mine is a tweak of that, which is I think the committee could be helpful to the board in furthering this discussion rather than doing this again, to clearly lay out those options and those like meaningful differences between approaches, between roles. I just think that could be, it's not picking one yet, it's just doing a little bit of groundwork to say like, there are these 3 models, and here are the meaningful differences between them, and here are a couple of examples of places that do each of these, or something like that, like as a step one.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe I'm ahead of us, but I think we've done that. Here's my only concern, is I don't want the committee to do a lot of detailed work about a certain option, and then the board says no. Right, I want the board to be clear on, right, so if we could do something very high level that says, here's the different options. I mean, I feel like we've done that work already, but if you all think we need a committee.
I think some of that work has been done with conversations that we
Yeah,
had around what we thought that we wanted and
Yeah, I
needed.
collected all the data from all the comments, and like I said, I sent that to Neil as here's the starter from what we had. But I want to be very clear, a committee can bring back anything it wants to the board, and the board can vote it down, right? That, we can't not do it because that could be a possibility.
But then we've wasted all that time. So I would like to at least say we want the committee to bring back options, because if they're gonna pick an option that I know today I'm gonna vote against, and maybe, do you know what I mean?
Sorry, the discussion I thought was they would bring back different options, and
Okay,
then
well,
the
that's-
board.
We've talked about several things.
Yeah.
If that's what we're doing, then that's the charge of the committee, to bring back.
Absolutely.
I think if we have the notes that Will took,
Right.
that were sent to Neil, and get them back from Neil, or get them shared by Will, that's your starting point. And then you can look at where some of the different job descriptions we've seen, and fit it for what we need here.
It's a matter of synthesizing that into some
Yeah.
clear choices.
Yeah,
Right.
We
this
could
would
then have
work
the
in
board
Orange
make,
County,
and then-
this would not work in Orange County. I think we can look at, or somebody could look at some of them like that we think this would work here, other things would.
Yeah, what's important to me is that we have an option that included in whatever comes back, was we have an option of a position that reports to the board. I don't know what other
Yes.
options you look at, but we wanna have one option of an ombudsman or an employee advocate that reports to the board. And again, having read a dozen of these, so many of them are facilitators, so that may be an option they're interested in, but there's also the option of being an advocate for them. So I'd like to put parameters around this that says, you know what, at least, I wanna see the option of an advocate that reports to the board, and after that, I don't care.
Right.
For the conversation.
All right, so I just.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Fuller.
Just another question. So have we gotten input about this from like the teacher of the year groups, OCAE? I mean, I know we hear different things from different people, but we also want to make sure that we're doing what would best be helpful and supportive. So I'm just wondering how we can go about that.
It's a good idea. Maybe there's some way for the committee to figure out how to do that,
Mhm.
working with staff.
Well, you could easily do
I wish
that, to get input.
I wish there was a way to get input from people who have resigned, right? Or people, I mean, I don't know, I wonder if, I'm thinking that purpose of this is to help with staff retention? Yes?
Yes.
Yes,
So
it was
how
one
do
of
we-
the items that we brought up as climate culture.
Right, so if it's to help with that, we need to make sure we're getting, a cross-section of people that are really happy here and people that might not be happy. So, and how would this help? Right, if we really wanna get into the research, those are the questions that I would be asking.
I think if you're gonna pull in, OCAE and other groups, then you need to have something to show them, the notes that Will had, some of the documents that we've looked at, something so that they have a clear idea, like, I mean, we had to look at things to figure out what we thought we wanted. So have some for them too, so they can have, a way of, coming up with things that they would feel are most beneficial for them, because they're the ones that are gonna be using this.
All right, other thoughts around this? Okay, how would we like to proceed? I'll share what I've, what I've heard. So committee to look at the employee advocate options, not a single one, but multiple options. The committee would also look at feedback on the role. And they would bring this back to the board for further discussion. And the committee would use the notes from the prior board discussion. And I can actually read those now. There's not a huge list, but I could read those now if just to refresh the board. The first one was, and again, these are just the notes from it. Neutral person, unbiased and objective. Confidential conversations. Independent of reporting structure was one of them. Advocate for employees and staff, share concerns and trends occurring in the district. Potentially could start part-time versus full-time, which would be a option that they would discuss. And then one of the other items that was mentioned, or the last item, was they work under a code of conduct. So those were the main comments that came out of the original discussion.
So just to play that back, so in addition to, if you will, being the advocate for the employee, that they would also advise the board on patterns or trends they're seeing
Yeah,
throughout the schools.
that was the
Okay.
item of sharing
No,
concerns and trends occurring in the district.
It's an expanded scope, but that's very interesting. Okay, just wanted to clarify, thank you.
All right, any other items for this committee to consider or cover?
So you said extent of how much time, or is it part-time, full-time?
That's in the notes. Part-time
Yeah.
versus full-time.
I think one other consideration is in some school districts, when it's an ombuds, the ombuds role also plays a role for students and families in addition to staff. And so that's like one of these choice points as well, these options to consider.
I'll say that I would be very concerned starting off with that scope, given the district. I wouldn't be against adding that at some point, but really focused on employees, and then as that role evolves, like if they start part-time and then we eventually say, yes, we want full-time, and that person would then have larger scope, but I'd be concerned at starting off with such a large scope for this one person. I think they would become overwhelmed in determining, do I spend the majority of my time with the families, or do I spend anyway, just some initial thoughts on that.
And I think right now, the need is with the people of the district, the teachers, employees.
So the list that you just went through was an employee advocate. It set some of these parameters that would limit the It says it's really, the option is an employee advocate reports to the board. So what are the options? You know, and it pretty
So
nicely
So
describes the
I'll
scope of it,
read
I
some
think.
others that I pulled from other policies that would be specifics, because those don't have specifics of what they would be. For example, listening to complaints, concerns, problems, or issues, helping employees explore and evaluate options, clarifying certain decisions, policies, and practices, create access to information if appropriate, and to help open channels of communication. Referring to helpful resources, assisting and surfacing issues that can be addressed in a formal process, taking objective action to resolve matters that fall outside the established forms and procedures, identifying new issues and opportunities for systematic change in the district, and bringing systematic issues to the board's attention for resolution. But see, those are, again, those are taking those and putting, what does that mean? Like, what's the day in the life? if
Sounds
you-
like a job description, right? It sounds like you have the option and you have the factors of a job description.
And if I could add, some of those things that you just described are in the work of human capital, so it sounds like there's some overlap that would need to be clarified.
I think if the committee goes forward, that it would be helpful for the committee to talk about what the policy implications will be. So for example, do we need whistleblower, we've gotten comments about whistleblower policies and other things.
So let me be clear, whistleblower is coming to the policy committee. We discussed it, and the draft is being brought forward from the attorney on that. And we already have some of those in place, but this strengthens and gives clear
Yeah, I'm
items
just
around it.
curious if the committee should be looking at that, to be looking at, if we have this person, it would work in tandem with that, right?
I would worry about getting too far in that until the board gives direction based
Okay.
on what they bring back. And that could be brought to the policy committee to look at the implications, but,
Okay, I'm
So,
trying to put it
yeah.
together, to say, you bring the position and you bring they inform each other and let them work.
Sure.
It's just
All right, anything else for the committee? All right, if so, we would need a motion to create it, and how many people? I would assume it'd be no more than 3 people from the board. Do we have interest in being on this committee? I personally would be interested in participating in this.
I would be okay with participating.
Anyone else? Andre? Okay. So with that, that's Sarah, myself, and Andre for the committee. Do we have a motion to move forward with the committee to look into the employee advocate, to get options and bring back to the board for further discussion, using the notes, and then also looking at what those could potentially be for the board to decide next steps after that. So this way, we don't go too far with it and then find out there's too many problems, but then we could then look at what are the policy overlap issues or concerns to address as well.
I might have the option to consider pilots, should it be piloted, right, how to implement it.
Yes, and that's part of the notes.
Okay.
So, all right, with that, we would need a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you both. All right. With that, we have a committee formed. The one item we did not define, and we will leave it to the committee, is to define the chair at their first meeting. All right. Now we have the consent agenda items that were pulled. The first one we had was the pre-K grant application. Do we have someone back
Yes,
there?
Dr. Green, Chief Academic Officer, is going to speak to that. Do you know what the question or concern is?
Yes. I know that one of the questions is, first and foremost, this is great to have seen and found a grant such as this. The question is, in the grant is really looking at the setup cost of the room, the professional development, the playground, and having that all. What isn't in the abstract is there's 6 positions. There would be 2 teachers and 2 TAs each for a total of 6, but it doesn't say where that funding would come from for that, and what would that look like. I know today most of the pre-K is under the Title I funding, and we had discussions early in the year about looking at middle school and the needs from Title I funding. So where would the funding for this come from?
So the purpose of the grant is to be able to get funds to expand program, to expand to Hillsborough and to New Hope Elementary School with the hope of acquiring licensing. And then once they acquire that, then they go to be picked up by the NC Pre-K. Funding would come from the NC Pre-K. And so without the grant to help with moving that work, it would be almost half a year before they would get any funding from the NC Pre-K.
And so once we have the seats, NC Pre-K from the state would provide additional funding to the district.
That's my understanding.
For all of those positions, for all 6 positions?
I believe, but let me double check on that part right here, because I raised the same question around just sustaining the program. And so it's my understanding that once the licensure is in place, then the NC Pre-K will pick up the cost. But I don't know what the full scope of it, so let me find that out and I'll get back.
Okay, so I guess with that answer, can this come back to our July 10th so we know? I think the concern we all have, without saying it, is that's a lot. And if we had to do it out of local funding, it would be a lot. I mean,
Right, and I raised that question too, here, and so but I didn't get into, in terms of paying for all the teachers. So let me get that clarification,
Okay.
and yes, it definitely, can bring it back. I did also ask the question with regard to the deadline, because they're now in would be in the second round for the application.
Okay.
So.
Bonnie?
Randy, if I could just, how did we pick those 2 sites?
They selected, the grant is very competitive, and so they tend to look at areas that are void of pre-K programs. So to make it more an incentive and make it more interesting for Orange County schools, they looked at where we have uniqueness, like our year-round school in Hillsborough and the dual language. So that's why those 2 were selected. And hopefully they would be competitive in the funding.
Okay, so, board, if you're willing, I believe we would need to motion to table this to the July 10th, if that's the will of the board.
Can we submit the grant, can we motion to submit this grant application now? I mean,
That's why I asked if, when the grant was due, if we could wait till the July 10th to get that.
I don't know when the second round do, because the first round was the end of May.
Okay.
But here, I could try to get an answer before anything around.
My only concern is if we don't know that, we are committing local dollars for that, if not true.
Can we get confirmation, could we do this, approve this submission of the grant contingent on getting confirmation that there would be NC pre-K funding for the staffing side? As long as, that may be something you can find out from DPI or DHHS or wherever. I don't know which one is the source of that.
So I would be okay with that, which means if it isn't, then
Then
we don't approve it.
shouldn't approve, right, we don't approve submitting the
If it-
grant unless we also have the funding from
That's correct.
from the state for it.
Verify funding.
Yeah.
How many pre-K classes do we have at New Hope?
At New Hope, I believe we have 2 pre-K classes at New Hope. I have to turn back in for 2. One.
One pre-K at New Hope.
This would make the same.
Okay, so with that, do we want to have a motion?
Motion to approve the submission of this grant and acceptance of funds contingent on confirmation that we would receive the funding for the positions from NC Pre-K.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Ms. Stoll. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Thank y'all. Okay, thank you so much. The next item is the Central Mechanical Project. All right, so does any other board member want to ask their questions about this, or I can ask on behalf of them? Okay. This is almost $1 million change order. And it states that the reason is the contractor was expecting to have an empty building for the duration of the project. When did we find out that the vendor was expecting that?
They were expecting.
No students in the building, like?
We had a communication with the vendor last week regarding the addition, or the idea that it wouldn't be vacant. The original bid, vendors bidded on the idea that there would be vacant, all right, from the previous staff. So they did bid on that, and there was not an alternative in that space. But in communicating with them last week to realize and getting this other additional information on it, I think it was last week.
Yeah, and let me provide a little more information. This project was, it predates all of us, so we had to construct some history. But there was a September 19th, 21 work session with the board where they were identifying capital improvement priorities. Number 1 was Central. At that time, they enlisted, or they enrolled, employed SUD associates to complete a bid package that was put out for bid. And that bid package came back, it was not acted on, it was about 3.9 million. But those bid documents, the drawings, everything that was operated from was predicated on the school being vacant. So there was a year and a half prior to when it was put back out for the bid again, they were operating under that premise that the school was going to be vacant.
So the bid packet said it would be vacant?
Correct. And that was dated information from a previous submission.
And nobody saw that, or?
Well, we saw it at the pre-construction meeting after the bid had already been awarded. And at that point, Laura came back with a proposal that they could do this in segments. I don't want to use the word phasing because phasing was posed as an option, but that would involve redoing bid documents yet again to structure the project so it could be complete in phasing. Phasing is always much more expensive. So they were willing to accommodate us as best they could. But just certain areas were walled off or had to be used for instruction. And they've taken a contract with 288 days and narrowed it down to 202. And virtually all of this is expense for overtime for 56-hour weeks for that 202 days. They're doing 288 days worth of work in 202 days, and that's the cost associated with it.
And much of it's labor.
Well, essentially all labor.
The Saturday includes overtime. Anytime you're in those segment periods, you also have to stand down crews, subs to come in and work that time period as well.
So in them doing this, what is the risk to the students and faculty in the building for them doing this? Are they doing any work while the school's in session? So this is only, all of the overtime and such would be done when the school is not open?
That's correct. And the work that would potentially impact students is being done as we speak. That portion they're ahead of schedule. But they do have a hard and fast November 1st stop date that they can only work in certain areas of the building. At that point, the instructional areas have been taken as far as they possibly take.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the board?
Was it ever thought about moving the students out of Central? Because I was asked my opinion of that in April. And, I mean, I never went anywhere, obviously, it didn't come to us, so was that something that was talked about with you all? I'm just curious.
In April, I would not have been here, but I believe it was talked about and suggested. Patrick Albee has mentioned it, but it was never brought to a formal vote or formal discussion. The economics of it too, there's a $400,000 contingency built into the $5.5 million contract. So this figure, this 942, is roughly 17%. That in this environment is a reasonable adjustment in the contract, given what they're doing. So we've got 400,000 in reserve. That doesn't account or allow us for other potential expenses in the future. But we also have identified funds from other capital projects that are being merged just as a matter of housekeeping right now. And that collectively is up to, well, we had 3.2 we'd hope to spend on real estate, so that's a bit later as well.
Any other questions?
There's not really an option. The only
No.
option would be to delay the project.
We
right?
cannot. Those students and faculty and staff deserve their building to be upgraded.
Yeah.
It's no, for me.
And to affirm that, any delay would be even more expensive.
More expensive as well.
I got it. I just, you know, in my mind, I keep thinking about the facility project, and there's a facility project that's gonna be done at the end of the calendar year. Is that gonna say something about this particular campus and a different way to use it? Or, you know, I just don't know. But right now, we're kind of already into this, so I think.
All right, if there's no other comments, can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. All right. The next item is the after-school contract and service.
One point for just procedure for everybody, because this owl is picking up things, the louder we are, if we're speaking, our interpreters are having a difficult time teasing this out, and that means some people at home might also have a hard time hearing, so I'm sorry I didn't bring that up.
No, thank you, thank you. All right. For this item, the after-school contract, I pulled it myself. And so at our special meeting 3 weeks ago on after-school summer programs, I said that I would not be supporting the extension and I just wanted to list out why I'm not. Originally, this came to us, we had a lot of questions about the company and what was needed. We were told 3 major items. The grant submittal that was due in April, not to risk our 5-star rating renewal, to give the required training for 5 stars. Right after that meeting, I was told by multiple school sites that we already had our renewal of the 5-star rating for each of our sites at least 2 months prior, which was easily seen on our state website. I was also told by staff that they had already taken all the required training for the 5-star and nothing was needed, and we'd already paid for online training of the amount of $300 that covers that. I immediately shared this feedback with the superintendent. We, the board, and the sites got an email that the contractor company would be expanding their role for the after-school summer program. I had several people reach out to me to tell me that this contractor company already had a full-time job that was never disclosed to us. Multiple people also shared that the contract was not asked about this before the email went out. I again shared this concern with the superintendent. The contractor reached out to me directly the day before our special meeting, and they shared they could not do this, and they were not asked about it yet, but they had a meeting later that day. During our special meeting, they were brought into the meeting and confirmed that they wanted to keep their original scope. During that special meeting again, I brought up the concerns that were told to us about the 5-star training. At that point, the superintendent shared that those items were not the items, but 2 development needs were needed. CPR training that's required and needed to be in person, the BSAC that's needed for each person to start and after school. Right after the meeting, the site shared that CPR training is done today in 2 parts. The first part is online, then the second part is done by the Orange County nursing staff for the in-person, and it's been done that way for years. And I've confirmed with our nursing staff that this is done and there's no additional cost to the district. The sites also shared that they have a contract with the training company online for $300 that does all the BSAC training, which is 5 hours, that's required, and the service does not expire till September, and all the sites have been trained and are ready to go for the summer programs. And this service has already been used for anybody that is needed that will come up. We found out during the special meeting that we missed the grant for April. Also, this contract was put in place. After this contract was put in place, we have lost 3 district staff, which multiple of them had 20+ years of experience in Orange County schools. All of this is showing me some disconnect between the district and the schools. I will not be supporting this contract. I also want to point out that after that meeting, and we were told that this person would not be taking the extended role, that the job posting on our website right now shows the contractor as the contact person for these job postings, which means their role, which is not defined right now, would be employment and positions. So I say all that to just say the board is welcome to do a motion on this, but I will not be supporting it tonight.
Well, I need to address, Mr. Atherton, those items. So you mentioned that Ms. Mathis has a business. She does, and we know from that meeting where the attorney was present, that has nothing to do with her being able to take on additional work. She mentioned that's her business, and so she's coming on as a consultant, not as an employee. We also know that Ms. Carr, who is overseeing after school, is currently on leave, that I have stepped in as the interim, and that Ms. Mathis is the expert in this area and her support is needed. I made that perfectly clear in that last meeting. Yes, she did reach out to you, She said she did because she heard so often her name was being tossed around, and she wanted to speak to you directly, and she reached out to you. She also clarified that she had her, the company or whoever it is that she's working for. You mentioned that she works for a nonprofit in Durham. She said she got to, that's her business. That's between her and the person who employs her. If she's available to be of support to us in this interim period, where we don't have a director for a summer school program, her expertise is needed. And so we do need her in that capacity. Now, with regards to what's posted, that is clearly an error. That she's not working for us in that capacity, so that's something that can be corrected. I see Ms. Hatcher nodding her head in affirmative. It's an error that can be corrected, but her expertise is needed to get us through until we can determine if Ms. Carr is coming back or not.
Just one point of clarity about this person is full-time at a different job, not the business. They have a full-time job with a company, and they own this business that's doing this for us.
And she's said she spoke with her supervisor. She said that in this room, you were present. She said she spoke with her supervisor, and her supervisor said she had flexibility. Now, whether that's true or not, that's between her and her supervisor. But what she can do is continue to be a consultant and of support. This is her, she's known throughout the country for her work in after school. She knows it like she knows the back of her hand. And there are, from what I understand, one of her other roles around the BSAC, she talked about how important it is to get that training in person. That yes, it is available online, but that's not the best way to learn how to work with children. And so she would be available in that regard. She also would be available for, as new staff come on board, to be of support to them in terms of providing training. But I made it clear in that meeting how much her knowledge and expertise in after school for that program is needed, until we can determine. Ms. Carr right now is on leave until September 5th. We have a lot to do between now and then. We are trying to run a summer camp. We also have to get ready for RTA, aftercare. We also have to get ready for the start of the school year with regards to after school, beginning with Hillsborough Elementary School. So we will know by September 5th whether or not Ms. Carr is returning. But until then, her expertise is needed.
Lonnie?
I just have a simple question. We originally hired this firm for the grant, to work on a grant. And I was just curious why they missed the deadline.
So I believe that, I'm sorry?
She wasn't here.
She was why
Right.
we needed her.
So Ms. Mathis wasn't on staff or supporting us at that time. That fell under
Oh, I thought we'd
another
already
staff
hired
person.
her. I thought we'd
So
already hired her to.
We did backdate, the contract came to us after, or it came back, we approved it on
April the 10th,
April well,
April the 4th, really.
so the contract didn't come to us until way after, and it was backdated to the actual start. And it was due, that grant was due on the date that she was brought on.
So we were late in putting a contract in place with her. Yes.
Can I speak? So regarding Ms. Mathis's contract, first and foremost, Ms. Mathis is a retired North Carolina state employee. So therefore, she could not start with us because being a retired employee, there is a 6-month window that you have to wait. So she had to confirm when she could start. She found out at April 1st that she could start.
And at that time, we began working with her regarding the contract.
And that, but by then it's already too late for the first one.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that is correct.
So has she done the July one that's due?
Yes, miss.
Is it submitted?
That I can't tell you. Let me rephrase. She was hired to make certain that the grant submittals that are due to make sure that we get our funding for this enterprise program is done timely.
I
Last
believe she spoke
conversation
to
we
that,
had with
yeah.
her, and I think she may even have mentioned it the day we were in here in that
She did.
meeting.
She said she was
called
up
me,
to date.
But she said she was up to date. And to that, we have no staff member that knows how to do that.
Well, I mean, that to me is this is why it feels really important to me to support this contract, is because of this gap in knowledge in some really important areas, including the grant, until we have clear, stable sort of leadership over this program. You know, the fact that it's a contract of up to, so that we'll be leveraging her only at the times that we need it, that makes sense to me. I'm glad we're doing it that way.
It has been said that when she was here before, she didn't do very much to help with the running of this program, that the person that was let go was the one who was doing most of the work, and she was having a hard time with the grants. So what's changed?
I'm gonna
That's
speak to, what I know. First of all, she bought the grant to us.
That's right.
We would not have gotten the grant without her knowledge.
That's absolutely.
So the other things, I don't know, and I'm not going to dip in to begin to talk about personnel matters. 'Cause
I'm not-
yet,
you're not
but-
supposed to.
Yes, but.
But I'm just
I
telling you
can't-
what's
yeah.
out there.
I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the fact that when she started working for us, I can't remember the date, but one of the things she did bring was the grant to us. And we had not had the grant prior to her coming.
So this is before the board. To proceed, there would need to be a motion.
I'll motion to approve the contracted services contract extension.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second.
May I just interrupt, because I want to be clear about what will happen if we don't approve this contract. So if we don't approve her contract to get the support that we need, I'm very concerned about, we don't have the expertise in the district at this time to do all the things that she can help us with through consulting. So I'm just making it clear, I mean, unless we are going to advertise for, again, this is the position already of someone who happens to be out on FMLA. She's out sick. And so we have to keep the district running in this regard in her absence. So if we're gonna, do we wanna hire someone? Will we get someone? How's that gonna impact our ability to stand up after care for Hillsborough Elementary School, which will be starting up in July, and the rest of the school? This work begins now. So I am very, very concerned. Do we shut everything down? Our families need aftercare. We have one of the most inexpensive summer camp programs that Ms. Mathis brought. So I don't know why we're hung up on the fact that she has a business and she works for someone else. She's retired and she's serving as a consultant. She's of the previous grant, the $20,000 that grant can go up to. She's billed us for $1,000. That's been well worth it. So I'm just concerned, that's all I'm putting out here, is that I'm concerned about what do we do? What would you recommend that we do? Should we not be able to consult with Ms. Mathis?
Yeah, I want to be very clear on my view of this. Not being told everything is the first concern, but my bigger concern is the climate and culture that I hear continuously And having 3 people that have long time in the district that walked out within a short time is concerning. I am more than willing to accept a different proposal that is from someone else to do the work and cover it. I'm more than willing to consider that, but I cannot, in good faith, go forward with
So
this.
just for clarity, are you suggesting that the walkout was because of Ms. Mathis, and that's why, that's hearsay? Where's the evidence
The
of
hearsay
that?
is from them, but
That's hearsay.
it is a fact of where we are. Anyway, like I said, my view is I'd be willing to entertain other options. Just not this contract. So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we have 3 ayes. Opposed, nay? Nay. Motion does not carry. All right, the next item is for discussion. For the work session, it's the M-Class data.
Good evening, Chair Atherton.
Good evening.
Vice Chair Purcell, board members, Dr. Felder, Superintendent. Before I begin and introduce my team for the presentation of our end of year data, I have a follow-up to the grant, pre-K.
Oh, good.
And so the NC pre-K will pick up part of the funding. They do per pupil funding that will cover salaries. The other part will come from the EC budget, and then the remaining will come from Title I. So those will be the 3 funding sources for the pre-K.
Go ahead.
Do you have any sense of what share of that will come from our existing, because the EC money and the Title I will need to like reallocate from somewhere else, so do you have any sense of what the share of that is versus NC pre-K?
It's my understanding that it's, the bulk of it will be the per pupil from NC pre-K, and then from that, the next tier will be, and I can't tell you how much of a percentage, but the smallest amount will come from the Title I.
Okay.
Is there a way to find out exactly how much would come from each pot and because, we're.
Understand. I'll see what.
Yeah, I mean, we want to expand, obviously, there's a waiting list for pre-K, we want to expand it. Are we gonna have to make big cuts in EC somewhere else, or, things like that in order to afford
We
it?
can certainly do an approximation, because right now the grant is looking at 16 to 18 students per site, with 1 teacher each and 2 teacher assistants. And so we can kind of use that compared with other sites and to get an estimate.
And just to be clear, if we move forward with the grant, we are obligating ourselves to the staff, to hire the staff. So we're obligating the staff.
Okay. All right, thank you for that update.
I'm glad to get that information back to you. Well, I'm always excited to bring forth and talk about our student achievement and our data. And so this evening, here I have my dynamic team who's ready to present the end of the year data on M-Class, Ames Web Plus, as well as our access data here. And so with this, I think you will find a lot to celebrating in terms of our student achievement as we look at cohorts of students here from 1 year to the next year. Celebration as we look at across the grades of our students from the end of the year last year to the end of the year this year. And celebrations as we also look at some of our student groups and the achievement and how we are making growth in significant student groups. Along with that, we also want to look at where we have challenges and where we need to put our focus and put more attention, as we always do with data. When we look at the instructional program, we try to frame instructional program around 4 key questions. One being, what do we want students to know? and you will hear from our team of what each assessment is assessing. The question around, how do we know that they know it? And that's a big piece of the information. What does the assessment tell us? The third is, what do we do when they don't know it? How are we providing supports and remediation? And then the fourth is, what do we do when they know it? How do we extend, how do we expand their learning? So as you look at the data here, see those points of celebration, those points that we're talking about in challenge, and also how it impacts the instructional program. So at this time, I bring forth here Ms. Mariah Morse, who will be followed by Ms. Emily Myers, and then Ms. Amber.
Good evening. We are excited to be here with you guys today to share some of our end of the year assessment data. We're going to begin by looking at M-Class Dibble's 8th assessment. So as we get started this evening, we want to just pause for a moment and briefly share an overview of the M-Class Dibble's 8th assessment so that we're all on the same page when discussing this data. So the M-Class Dibble's 8th assessment, often referred to just as M-Class, is administered to all students in grades K through 3. This assessment is comprised of short subtests that each measure a different aspect of foundational literacy skills. 5 of the subtests are short 60-second assessments that are administered in a one-to-one setting where the student works directly with the assessor. The 6th subtest, maze, is a 3-minute measure that is given online that is supposed to measure comprehension. The Dibble's 8th edition is administered 3 times a year, and at each benchmark window, students receive a composite score. This composite score is calculated to be the most robust indicator of reading risk that a student can have in K through 3. That composite score outweighs any of the other individual subtest measures. So for the first part of this presentation, we're going to be talking about that composite score, which refers to the overall indicator of risk. A lot of times, board members and the public ask, does M-Class relate to EOG proficiency? So we want to just take a moment to talk a little bit about that. The Dibble's 8th assessment refers specifically to foundational reading skills. We know that in order to pass the EOG reading test, a student must have strong foundational reading skills coupled with comprehension skills, coupled with attention and focus and longevity with reading these passages. So this is a part of being a skilled reader, but this by no means is indicative of what EOG scores will be when they're released later. We're going to begin by looking at beginning of the year data against end of the year data, broken out by grade level. So you'll see that with kindergarten, we saw a 41% change for proficiency. Tonight, we're looking solely at proficiency with M-Class, not at growth. So this is, are our students at grade level in reading? We're very proud to report that in kindergarten, 71% of our students are proficient with their foundational reading skills. In first grade, we saw an 18-point jump, which is significantly higher than we saw last year to 75% of students. Second grade, we saw an 11-point jump at 69%, and third grade remained the same at 53%. Just for comparison, the 2021-2022 school year, North Carolina average for kindergarten was 67, and the national average was 60%. So we were higher than both the state and national for kindergarten. First grade was 63% in North Carolina, and nationally 62%. And second grade was 58% in North Carolina, and a national average of 58%. They did not release third grade, so we were higher than both the state and national average for what test scores were last year. North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has not released that for this year. The next slide is a really interesting slide for us to look at on the literacy team, because it shows the percent of students proficient last year at end of the year compared to the percent of students proficient this year. We like to look at this to look at the overall health of our core curriculum, to make sure that our students are growing and that we're continuing to build capacity with relatively new curriculum choices. So in kindergarten, last year we were at 75%, and we did notice a slight dip at 71%. We are looking at that, and it is important to remember that this is an average, so we had a number of schools that were higher than this, and we saw increases at a number of schools. So we're looking at why there were certain areas that did tend to pull that down. In first grade, we went from 67% at the end of the year last year to 75%. So that is that large jump that we saw last slide to this slide, and we're really happy with that increase of 8 points. Second grade, we saw the largest jump from 59 to 69%. We're particularly proud of this because our literacy coaches came together after middle of the year and thought about core plans for the second grade, looking at our phonics progression to make sure we're getting into more multi-syllabic word coding. So we're really proud to see that. And then third grade, we saw a 2% increase. When we look at our scores disaggregated by student group, we see a number of trends that we would like to highlight, as well as dig into deeper to think about how to move the needle even more. Whereas we were just looking at the composite of all of our students together, we understand that Orange County Schools is only as strong as all of our students. And that in order to move the needle for all of our students, we have to recognize that we do want to make sure that we're having a positive impact on all demographic groups and all students from all different backgrounds. So Orange County Schools, for the composite change, is noted on that first row. So we saw a 5 percentage point increase from last year to this year when you looked at all students in Orange County Schools, grades K through 3. When we look at the black student group, we saw a 7% increase, the white 5%, Hispanic 4 points, Asian 12 points, multiracial 2, EC students 1, and ELD 7. So when we think about the implications of this data, one thing is it's really exciting that each group did show growth. So that is something worth noting. However, we do notice that some groups are showing faster rates of improvement than others. We also know that some of these groups are historically performing at different rates. And so when we think about how this work intertwines with our equity department, we want to make sure that some of these groups' growth rate is faster because we're trying to close gaps, so that we don't want it to just remain the same. So those are conversations that we're looking at. We're looking at how to align this work with some of the equity work that's coming out to ensure growth with each student group. So for this next part of the presentation, we're going to move away from that composite score, which was the overall indicator of risk, and look at some of the subtests to look at how is our core going. So we've been on this journey for 2 years together where we implemented Haggerty, we implemented decodables, we strengthened Letterland, and so these subtests give us an idea of the health of those implementations. Just as a reminder, when we built those Scarborough reading ropes, I think it was last year, we are looking at that top part of the rope, which are foundational reading skills, specifically phonological awareness, and our curriculum for that is Haggerty, and then decoding and sight recognition, and our curriculum for that is Letterland. New Hope is piloting the HMH foundational skill lessons, and as well as the addition of decodables. The HMH into reading and into literature, I'm sure, is burning in your minds, as that is our new curriculum, but we're not going to touch that till our EOG scores come out, because that touches more of our bottom part of the rope. So when we look at how Haggerty is doing, this is a big point of pride for the district. We note in here, Emily's gonna come up and she wears all things MTSS, and she loves to talk about our goal is 80% of students achieving during core, for core to be considered a healthy core curriculum, and we're getting very close for kindergarten and first grade, and that's exciting as this is just the second year of implementation. This is from end of the year last year to end of the year this year. So we saw a 6 points increase in kindergarten and 9-point increase in first grade. And then when you look diagonally, you can look at how a cohort is growing. So if you look at kindergarten students last year, we're at 67%. Those same students are the first graders at the end of the year this year. They grew 10 points to 77%. So phonological awareness, yes.
Can I have a clarity question? Okay, so you're saying those are the phonological awareness scores.
Yes.
So Haggerty works on phonological awareness,
Yes.
and this is how that's grown.
That's exactly
Cool, okay.
right. So if you notice, we have the part of the reading progression and then the curriculum.
Got
So
it.
phonological awareness is our most foundational reading skill. If a student misses this, they are at risk for further reading problems for the rest of their life, as well as spelling. So this is a very important foundational reading. So we're happy with how Haggerty is progressing, and we think Emily Myers is going to be very proud of us for almost reaching that 80% there. Next year will be different. So now, when we come to the next slide, we're looking at how are our foundational skill lessons going. This is Letterland in 6 out of our 7 elementary schools, with New Hope being the one odd man out that's piloting the HMH foundational skill lessons, as well as the decodables that we purchased last year for all students in all elementary schools. So again, with kindergarten, we did note that slight decrease there, so we are going to be looking at what that might be attributed to. I will say we were above both the national and the state average last year. We kind of like hit it out of the park, so we're not sure, but we are going to keep an eye to see why we saw that slight dip. For first grade, we saw 13 points increase. So we went from 65% of students being proficient last year to 78% this year. Second grade, we went from 61% to 74% for another 13 percentage point increase. And then in third grade, we went from 56% to 65%. This is really great to see in second and third grade. It's harder to move foundational skill data because students are being challenged with harder words on the assessment. So they're moving away from some of those shorter, easier words into more advanced phonics patterns. And traditionally, with these measures for students really across the state, you don't see as large of an increase. So that is something that our team is specifically proud of. Again, comprehension, those scores are coming. We will be looking at our EOG data, which has not been released yet, and we're not allowed to even like take a guess at quite yet. But that is something that we will look at to see how that HMH implementation is moving along. So celebrations and pride points. Orange County Schools did have a 5-point increase in proficiency in grades K through 3 from the end of the year in 2022 to 2023. Each student group did demonstrate growth and proficiency. We had double-digit growth in kindergarten, first, and second grade from beginning of the year to end of the year. Haggerty is working as evidenced by the increase in proficiency in phonemic segmentation fluency subtest scores, which is the data we were just looking at. And then use of decodable readers and connecting phonics instruction, which is something we're learning in letters, does seem to be working in grades 1, 2, and 3 as evidenced by our increase on the subtest measure nonsense word fluency. Some responses that we've begun based on this data as well as trends that we looked at last year at middle of the year is we are holding data meetings with leadership teams at each school. So we go, Ambra, myself, Beth Swain, as well as anyone else who wants to join us, we do go to meet with principals, assistant principals, and coaches at their school and share their data broken down, composite, student group, EOG, M-Class, AIMS-Web. We also have data meetings with our literacy coaching team, which are coaches from all of our schools that have literacy coaches, to look at our district trends as a whole. And that's how we came up with the second grade core plan to attack more multisyllabic words, which we saw paid off with our data. We went through and did professional development with all K-8 schools on engaging with complex texts. And that was in response to things that we were seeing during our instructional walks, where we wanted to build a common vocabulary for how we talk about grade level reading selections. We're also having professional development with our literacy team to help them be the leaders in this work. We're engaging in coaching cycles, both district-led as well as coach-led, based on specific school needs. And then we are facilitating learning walks so that district staff can see school-based teams in action. Some growth areas and next steps. We want to continue our core plan for 2nd and 3rd grade based on some of the foundational skills. We did make the decision to move forward in our From Phonics to Reading curriculum that we've done for the last 2 years, but we're adding in a more complex level next year. So we're moving from level B to level C, which is an additional degree of difficulty because this data shows our students are ready for it. So we're excited to push them a little bit more in 3rd grade and see what else they can do. We also are trying to increase our use of high-yield instructional strategies to pair that with our HMH curriculum. We know that no curriculum alone will move students. It is a highly qualified teacher with strong instructional practices coupled with a research-backed curriculum. So we rolled the curriculum out this year, and next year we're going to really dig in to make sure that our instructional strategies are high quality in conjunction with that. We also plan to continue our focus on student groups to ensure that each and every student in Orange County Schools has equitable and engaging literacy instruction. So at this point, that concludes our section on M-Class, and I'm excited to pass my baton over to our Director of MTSS, Emily Myers.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here tonight to share our Orange County Schools end-of-year data from Ames Web Plus. We have many celebrations and positive trends in both reading and math, thanks to the hard work of our instructional staff and our support personnel at the school and at the district level. So as an overview for Ames Web Plus, in Orange County Schools, we administer 3 times a year, just like we do M-Class. So we have VOI, MOI, and EOI. Students complete the reading assessment in grades 4 through 8, so we pick up where M-Class ends. In North Carolina, we are provided M-Class for all of our students K-3. After that, school districts have to make a decision about how they would like to continue screening. So we use Ames Web for reading in grades 4 through 8, and it is also our math assessment for all students in grades K through 8. This assessment data provides a risk determination in the area of those foundational skills. So just like Mariah shared, there is some connection to performance on EOGs. However, screeners measure foundational skills and the EOGs measure mastery of standards. So those are 2 different things. All right, here is our Ames Web Plus reading data for grades 4 through 8 at the end of the year. For all of our students who completed the reading benchmark, 68.8% were determined to be at low risk, 13% were determined to be at moderate risk, and 18.2% were deemed to be at high risk. All eligible students should be assessed at each window, as this is a universal screener. MTSS guidance suggests that risk thresholds are at about 80% of low risk. That's when you have confirmation that you have a strong and healthy core. 15 to 18% of your population at moderate risk, and only 3 to 5% at high risk. So you'll notice that our percentages are slightly off of what that ideal is. Our next slide shows our Ames Web Plus reading data by grade. This graphic shows the reading data for all students in grades 4 through 8 for the 3 benchmark windows across the year in all risk areas. So it's a big chart. For example, in the fall, 27% of 4th graders were at high risk. So that's that very first data point. At middle of the year, that dropped to 24%. So it's positive, we're moving in the right direction. And then at the end of the year, it dropped to 21%. So we'd like to see our high risk numbers dropping, our moderate risk numbers dropping, but we'd like to see our low risk numbers rising. So for our 4th graders, we actually had a 6% positive change from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So we're moving in the right direction. That left-hand section is all of our high-risk scores at BOI, MOI, and EOI at every grade level. The middle section is our moderate risk, and then that right section is our low risk. The same data is shown here, disaggregated by student group. And you'll notice that there are a couple of student groups where we did not have enough students in those groups to have a number to report out, so those are blank. But this same graphic will be shown in a few moments for math data. So this is our reading. Our overall math data
I'm
for
sorry, Emily, can you put that chart back up and just, I'm not sure I understand.
There you go.
So the red, just if you could help.
Sure.
Understand what
So
this is.
for each student group, so for example, our Hispanic students, the number of students who were in high risk for reading at the end of the year, so this is kind of their summative measure, is the red bar. The yellow bar underneath it is the number of Hispanic students who were at moderate risk, and then the green bar is the number of students who are at low risk that were part of our Hispanic subgroup. And then same for Black or African American, white, Asian is a very small number of students represented here, and then our multiracial group.
And the reason the white bar is so far is because there's more students.
That's the number of students, yes. And remember, this is just for 4-8, because K3 is M class, and we don't screen at the high school. So this is only 4 grade spans.
And everybody gets tested?
It is a universal screener, so we do screen every student in membership. There are a few exceptions for students that this test would not be appropriate. Teachers are trusted to make that decision based on those individual students. But this encompasses the entire student population. So this would be students with disabilities, general education students who don't have any special services, our multilingual learners, ARG students, students with 504s. Yes. Okay. So here's our math data. In the area of math, all students in grades K-8 were assessed. 76.3% were found to be at low risk, 10% at moderate risk, and 13.7% at high risk. Again, all eligible students should be assessed at each window, as this is a universal screener. We are closer here to the ideal of 80, 15 to 18, 3 to 5. But you'll notice that our kind of point of concern is that our students who are considered at high risk is almost 14%, and we'd really like to see that much closer to 3 to 5. So in the same format as we saw for our reading, our high risk data is on the left, moderate risk in the middle, and then our low risk is to the right. You will notice that in all grade spans and all risk levels, we had positive growth this year. So that is quite a celebration. You will notice that there are some areas where that growth is smaller, and then you have some areas, for example, kindergarten, our low risk students moved from 36% at the beginning of the year to 80% at the end of the year, and that speaks to that high quality core instruction that our kindergarten students were receiving in math. So they hit that 80%, which is our kind of our benchmark there. Here's our disaggregated math data, very similar to what we looked at for reading. This is also disaggregated by student group. Same high risk, moderate risk, and low risk for each one of those student groups. However, this is a larger group of students because the reading was just grades 4 through 8, and this, do we need to extend the meeting? Oh.
You read my
I mean, I
mind,
can't
so-
suggest that, but I think one of
No,
you.
that's why I raised my hand. Board, I want to point out we do have 2 other topics on the agenda as well. They do have additional time to cover. We had choose to not do those, or we can, but we would need to extend appropriately. Dr. Felder, do you have an idea of what it would be for the last two items, or?
Well, it depends on the robustness of the discussion, so to speak. We what do you think, Denise? AIG, middle school staffing needs. I mean, that's not
maybe
one we
just-
have to get at
Right.
tonight.
Okay.
That has implications for, we just wanna put it out there, and we can come back, you have the data.
For the other.
One, so
Sure.
we can come back for that.
So, I guess based on that, we could finish this topic, and then have those other two items for, one we already have, and the other we could discuss at a later meeting, if that is the pleasure of the board.
Works for me.
Okay.
If I could just, I would like to discuss the other one at a board meeting. I know you have the
Sure,
information. Doesn't have to be the next one, but at some point.
Absolutely.
Would like to present the data from the re-administration of the teacher working condition survey.
Okay, absolutely.
And,
All right, so can we get a motion to extend, how much more time plus some discussion?
I can be done in 3 minutes.
Okay, so.
And then we have access data, that is, limited because it is, preliminary.
I'll motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes. Should I
By-
say 15?
Yeah, I was gonna.
I'll say 15.
I was gonna
I'm
request
motion it.
15.
It's very ambitious, 3 minutes. I'll motion to extend by 15 minutes.
And I do believe we would need to also include tabling the other items.
And table the other
Items for
items
future
for a
meeting.
future.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all so much. Please continue.
Celebrations and positive trends. There are several celebrations and positive trends for our Ames Web Plus data for this school year. High-quality core instruction and targeted intervention has been successful in lowering risk for students across our district in both reading and math, and you see some of those high points there. In response to this data, from the BOY window, so at the beginning of the year, school-based MTSS teams created their student groupings for targeted instruction and monitored health of both the reading and math core. At the middle of the year, a comprehensive data evaluation was conducted with school-based MTSS teams in the areas of reading and math, as well as attendance and behavior. This overall data review provided teams with an opportunity to determine which efforts were yielding positive results and what areas of focus needed to be addressed for the remainder of the year. Data provided at the end of year window is being used to determine student groupings for intervention and enrichment for the start of the 23-24 school year. Continued coaching for specific school needs will continue into the next school year, as well as continued work with our district level instructional coaches. And finally, our growth areas and next steps. Moving forward, with the help of our literacy department, we're going to continue to focus on instruction and intervention in reading in middle grades. If you remember back, that was one of our areas where we had a little less growth, and then we actually had a 1 percentage point drop in one grade level, which is not extremely significant, but we want to take a look at that and see what may be at play there. Additionally, school teams will continue to be supported in their decisions regarding intervention groupings, instructional material choices, as well as instructional practices that are responsive to student needs across all tiers of instruction. At this time, Amber Wilson, Executive Director of Literacy, will share our preliminary access data.
Right, I'm going to share quickly with you a little bit about our preliminary access data. So again, just so we are all on the same page, access is the language proficiency assessment that we give students annually. Typically, we administer this assessment in like the February-March timeframe. Students take an assessment in speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and they have proficiency scores for each of those. Access is not an assessment of grade level proficiency. The Access assessment is looking at the language proficiency skills that a student has to have in order to access instruction in the classroom without modifications and extra supports. We also administer an alternate version of Access to our students with significant cognitive disabilities that are in our self-contained extended content classrooms. And so this year, I'll get to that in a moment, but we were able to exit one of our students on alternate access, which is the first time we've done that. So here we go. All right, so you can see that we've experienced some growth, just a little bit, in our ELL population here in Orange County Schools. Last year, we tested 824 students in the spring. This year, we tested 912. And that number continued to climb as we, like I said, we administered this in February, March. And we assess any student who enters while that window is open that is eligible to take Access. But so we have added an extreme number of students into this population. We did have 49 students acquire English proficiency and exit ESL services this year. But I do want to remind you that when a student exits ESL services, they don't come off of this caseload of our ESL teachers. They remain what's called a monitored EL for 4 more years. So when we think about the way that we allot positions and teachers and balance caseloads across our district, we count those students who are exited but being monitored as like a half, and then we count newcomers as 1.5. Does that make sense? So that you understand how that's kind of weighted in the service and the work that it takes in terms of caseload managers to continue to monitor these students. I'm not going to go into the breakdown of how you get the composite scores, but that information is there for you. But in summary, we had 5.4% of our ML population exit this year, and last year we had 3.3%. So we are up for this year. The next slide is going to show you the elementary schools. The students who exited from last year is in the lighter blue. The darker blue is this year. And the number on each bar tells you the number of students that exited in that grade level. You will see the trend that we had the most students exit in 4th and 5th grade. That is typical. It takes 3 to 4 years for a student to acquire the skills that they need and to have language proficiency. So that is a typical pattern, and we're not out of the norm in seeing that pattern here. Here you have the secondary schools, same data. We do not have as many students who exit in secondary schools. The majority of our students, if they come to us in elementary school, should be exiting in elementary school. But this is an area that we continue to focus on and work on, and we are doing some professional development targeted at specific schools, but also offering some professional development across the district to support all of our classroom teachers in developing strategies that support language acquisition. Because what we know is those strategies that we use for our ML students in the classroom are good for all students in the classroom. So we are continuing to lean into that and doing more collaboration. We even have a book study, 2 of them actually, that the literacy coaches and the ELD specialists are going to do in collaboration this year, so that we have people as a team to go back into schools and help lead that work in conjunction with some professional development that Emily Lewis, our ESL coordinator, is leading across the district. The reason that this is still preliminary data for you is this is only a partial data set. So you are currently only looking at the number of students who exited. We do not yet have the individual ML annual goal data. So we can't tell you the progress that students are making. So if they didn't exit, we still have to look that they're improving and they're gaining language acquisition and proficiency at the rate that is appropriate for them, and those annual goals are set by the state. We will get those in the fall. Usually it's October-ish when we finally get those reports, and that is also part of our school report card formulas as well. So at this time, we will entertain any questions for myself, for Emily, for Mariah, I know that we only have a couple of minutes, but we do appreciate the time with you, and to share this data. And if there's things that we can answer for you here on the floor tonight, we're happy to do so. And if we can't answer it tonight, we can compile the data that you need, and we'll get it back to you.
All right, questions? Ms. Smollett?
Well, it's awesome to see all of the progress across these areas, so that is great. One area, I think it's just a data request.
Okay.
So I understand that why AimsWeb is not like directly linked to EOG's standards versus like foundational skills. I would love, if this is possible, to see the correlation between EOG scores and AimsWeb risk categories, and just sort of even like those categories of risk and those scores, like how many kids fit into the different bubbles, because I remember from last year that there were many more students who were in the like low risk category than actually passed the EOG in math especially is the one that I remember, and so like even seeing how directly correlated they are is something I'm interested in.
Do you have anything to speak to that? I can pull that together and based off of, I can pull last year's end of year screener data and compare it to last year's EOG data, just to give you an idea.
A sense of generally, yeah.
And I can share that with the board in a weekly update.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I think my sort of concern related to that is if we're using AimsWeb to identify which students need tier 2, tier 3 supports, it's not gonna hit all the kids who ultimately are not set up to pass the EOGs. So like, how does that all fit together? Which is probably a topic for a student achievement committee meeting. We won't get into it now.
Sure, thank you.
I think so.
All right, Bonnie?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, I just want to thank you for doing this, and so and just so just checking up on you guys. You have built incredible relationships with the schools, and it's really, you are beloved, right? So there's no higher professional compliment that I can see, so thank you for that. So there's several questions. One is, obviously when we see no growth in 3rd grade, what is that gonna tell us about our EOGs? And we have the EOGs, the state, we've sent them to the state, correct? So we have some idea about what that looks like. I also noticed, and from our perspective, remember, we don't do core instruction and any of that stuff, but we do have a resource responsibility. And if you look across our schools, there are pretty substantial disparities in the grades across our schools, and we don't see subgroups, but I'm particularly looking at the New Hope data that was on the agenda, substantially lower than the other elementary schools, and it's just curious. And then when you presented the aggregate, it showed the Spanish kids are also the lowest performing subgroup, right? Or was it the economically disadvantaged was the lowest performing subgroup? I don't remember, that wasn't in the package. The question, so the essence of the question is, how can we help? And where can we target interventions and support? And it also could be, I don't know if you've looked at teacher absenteeism or teacher turnover.
So we do look at that.
And how is that affecting it? And do we have schools that really need help?
Yeah, so when we sit down and look at our data, there's a lot, right? And we unpack that data in multiple layers. And we then look at it school by school, teacher by teacher, class by class, and we think about those stories too, because like you said, we're in the schools a lot.
Yeah.
So we know, like for example, we know of one school that had no teacher in 5th grade all year. We know of a 3rd grade classroom that had a sub for like 70% of the year. Those things impact, right? And we have to take those things into consideration for multiple reasons. How are we then supporting that lit coach? How are we supporting that classroom? How are we ensuring what's happening for those kids? But then also, those kids had that situation in 3rd and 5th grade. How do we support those kids as they go into next year, right? And what supports do we need to put in place with those kids in addition? But we do look at the resources across multiple buildings, and we look at the professional development needs across multiple buildings, and engage in really in-depth conversations with principals and leadership teams at schools.
And we're interested, I'm interested in are there areas where we need to look at smaller class sizes, for example? Because there are disparities in class sizes across our schools. Are there things that we should be looking at when we're in budget process and, you know, because we have to allocate our funds, but we don't get that feedback from you? And these are, you know, are there ways that we can help that would help to stabilize and help these kids, bottom line?
Thank you for always asking that question.
I can't help it, it's like, you know, it's the only one I know.
One of the things that, we do, and certainly, you know, during our student achievement committee, is to break the data down by the skill sets that each assessment, test, to determine, okay, what is it that is impacting the data, and what will be the best resource to apply to that. Also, we do look at interventions, as you saw here with our Haggerty achievement, and also what we didn't present is the success of our NC Ed Core tutors and working in small groups. Because they analyze
And
the
we have
data.
that data
Well,
and correlation,
yeah.
like we've already correlated that. So we built groups in Dibble so we can monitor the kids that are being served by that intervention structure against kids who are not.
It helps us to know which of those things we should be spending more money on, which of those things we should, or apply differently, but yeah, keep going, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, the only other thing is that as we, you know, I appreciate the question, but also one of the things we want to make sure, it's not always additional things that's needed, is how we are indeed using resources effectively, how we are building capacity across the board of all our teachers to be able to show, you know, and impact student performance.
We also do leverage our literacy intervention plan that is now required to go to the state every year for submission, and which then in turn directly determines when it's approved if we get our PRCO 85 allotment. And those funds have strict stipulation to be used to support literacy in K through 3.
So let me just flip you upside down for a second, right? Because when you guys talk about this, what I hear is I hear the programmatic changes that we're looking at, which that's part of what you have to do. You know, but our question is the school level changes that are needed. And so, for example, NC Ed, you know, we haven't really been told NC Ed is working, or should we stop funding it? You know, these are, you know, or is there a certain intervention that our Spanish students, I'm making this up, that our Spanish students need that we need to be looking at? You know, should we expand the newcomer? I've been told by teachers we need to expand the newcomer program in middle school because it's not long enough. The kids need, you know, so what are those kinds of resource and programmatic changes that we can make that would, for a single reason, and that's to help our kids do better and help the kids, especially the kids that are underperforming, do better?
And I think just to, not to take away from you all responding to that question, but, you know, the middle school example, there was the request for an additional MLL teacher, I think at the middle school level, in order, you know,
That was not the.
that's a resource, right?
Right, that's a
resource
request, but the schools are asking for, they're saying a week in a newcomer program doesn't do it, they need a month or 2 months or 3 months. And, you know, I'm just making it, you know, but I, you know.
Yeah, my broader point was, I think some of these additional resource pieces, when they see them, I think they have shown up in some of the budget requests as
Yes.
well.
Yes, and when you look at our LIEP that was revised last year before submission, which is the service model that we write for how we serve our ML students, including our newcomers, and look at each proficiency level, you will see the robust increase in what is required to support those students. We made massive revisions last year, and we will maintain those revisions going into this year, even though we continue with our increase in population to struggle to meet the standard that we're setting for ourselves. But that's what we know is best for kids.
Right.
So we're gonna keep our standards high, even though we know we're pushing to get there, and that, like you mentioned, that is why you see staffing requests like additional ML teachers that we added last year in January.
Right, so what happens is with this, the summarization, the aggregation undermines the board having visibility to where the challenges are. You know, and so that's what would help us to see where the challenge is and they're not always yours, right? It could be a particular school with a particular student group or whatever, so I don't know how we can get that, we're just kind of sharing that.
Yeah, I understand.
But
Thank
you
you.
are, doing great, thank you.
And I've taken note of your request and we'll get back to you.
All right. Any other additional questions? Thank y'all so much for coming tonight and all your passion for our students. All right, board, with that, we are at the end of the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Back forward? I'll take that as a yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. I wouldn't blame you. Have you finished? Have you finished your homework?